In the year 2018, luxury niche perfumery acquired a new house for the olfactory indulgence of the masses, started by a single man erupting with passion, with drive, and with clear vision, thus birthing Dallas, Texas' very own Argos fragrances. It wasn't until 2019 that their all-new scent took the fragrance community by storm due to the introduction of their infamous Triumph of Bacchus release. Hyped and armed to the teeth came the positive opinions of influencers and fragrance snobs alike, discussing this scent in droves. It was this very fragrance that hooked me by the gills during the year of 2020 when I discovered the house and the scent, while being knee-deep in the pandemic purgatory we all were graced by. Since then, my guest and his fragrance house have become quite the favorite amongst collectors and fragrance enthusiasts, as presentation alone calls for the feeling of your money being well spent. Roman and Greek mythology invades every last corner of each and every release, coming from the backstory, the artwork, and the scent inspiration itself. This multifaceted individual has an interesting story beyond fragrance, and it was fascinating to learn about the footsteps it took him to get here. So please, without further ado, welcome my guest, Christian Petrovich. You're now listening to the Sauce Talk Podcast. What's going on, everybody? It's your boy Al Siggety Sauce, and welcome back to the Sauce Talk Podcast. Today, we have a very special guest with us here today in the podcast studio. We have the CEO and founder of Argos Fragrances, my boy, Christian Petrovich. What's up, baby?
Good. How you doing, Al? Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for coming, man.
Hey, I just happened to be in town, so I'm glad we were able to coordinate and get this happen.
Yeah. It's been a long time in the making.
Yeah. We've been talking about this for at least 6 months.
Oh, easy.
Yeah.
Easy. So, how was the weather shock for you coming by?
Well, coming from Dallas, it's a little bit of a shock, but I was actually expecting snow, and I've lived in Chicago, I've lived in Denver, so I'm no stranger to the cold. So I was actually looking forward to some flurries to see a little of the white stuff. Yeah. We don't get that in Dallas, so yeah, I didn't get it though. We got a few little sprinkles and flurries the other day, but it's nice. It's beautiful. It's sunny out.
Well, you're getting the cold. That's for sure.
It's cold and windy. The wind will whip your head around for sure.
Yeah. So, when most people interview you, you've done plenty. They're all over YouTube and whatnot, and they're usually fragrance centric.
Right.
And that's obviously what we're going to talk about here largely. But you're a multifaceted individual, and there's a lot of things that not only you do, but have done. So I'd like to highlight some of that stuff and get to know you a little more and get your fans to know you a little more before we dive into the, fragrance side of things. Sure. So your ethnicity, you're of Russian and Italian descent. Is that correct?
That's correct, yes.
Who's the Italian and who's the Russian in your family?
The mother was Calverte and father is Petrovich.
Ooh, Petrovich. Здравствуйте.
He's son of Peter. So yeah, it's a pretty well-known name.
Yeah. You're known for many different things. You're a model, you're an actor, you're involved in real estate development. You own, homes where I don't want to call you a slumlord, but
hey, you don't know me. No, we keep it above water,
Yeah.
No, I try to, everything that I do, if you've seen the fragrance, that you've seen the brand and you followed, you can imagine the other industries that I'm into. Yeah. I do things right.
Which one came first of all these things? I would assume that it was the acting or the modeling that came first.
So I got into acting later in life. The modeling came first. That was probably when I was 16. And that was back when I was in the Midwest, living in Michigan. I was in Grand Rapids and Kalamazoo, and then I lived in Chicago for a while, then down to Miami. So that was in the 90s. So that's been a minute.
Wow.
But I've always, and really that was the catalyst that got me into the beauty and fashion world, was just being the modeling side of it.
Yeah.
And then for other people that don't know, I actually got my degrees in healthcare. So I was actually a therapist for a long time. So I got my associates, got my bachelor's, got my master's, 2 years away from a doctorate in occupational therapy. So that was another whole life. I like to think that like every 6 to 8 years, I go through like a renaissance phase and I kind of change things up a little bit. But yeah, I've got several degrees, been in the fashion world, both sides, business owner, model, and then also in the healthcare industry too. So I'm dabbled in a lot of things, and then real estate, of course, too.
Yeah, yeah. So were you modeling for fashion houses or specific designers? Who were you modeling for exactly? Or like modeling agencies that for magazines and stuff?
Coming out of the Midwest in the 90s, I wasn't like picked up by a particular brand like you would have if I would have been in LA or New York. It was a smaller market being in the Midwest. So I had agencies that I worked for. So I'd be doing like bridal shows. I'd be doing sports, fitness apparel, doing runway stuff. They'd send me down to Miami Fashion Week. I'd do New York Fashion Week. Those would be kind of like a 1 week in and 1 week out. So it wasn't like a particular brand or house that I modeled for. It was several agencies that I worked through.
Oh, okay. Interesting. What was it that started you? What actually got you into it, and what was your desire to, I want to start modeling for a career besides realizing you have looks?
It wasn't that I realized. It was more people, it was outside influences telling me that, hey, you need to do this, you should do this. And then they'd push me to go to auditions or castings. And then, you go to a couple of them, someone notices you out of the crowd. I remember back in the 90s going to some of those auditions and some of those castings, and there would be several hundred people there. So
wow.
To get picked out of that many people was a rare thing. But, that's how I started. And it wasn't something that I figured I would ever do like as my one thing, my one gig. It was always like a side thing for me. It wasn't my main focus because I was still in college. So it wasn't like I was dropping my schoolwork and going to these auditions full time. It was fitting it in when I could.
And this is when you were going to college for occupational therapy, correct?
Well, initially coming out of high school, I went to a community college. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was thinking electrical engineering. I loved to take things apart, see how things worked. I was into electronics, coding. I was into a lot of things, but I didn't know which was going to be my path. I was also into fitness and health, obviously.
Yeah.
So I was thinking maybe, let's maybe get into healthcare somehow. But I'm glad I went to those 2 years and got my associates and just got the prereqs out of the way, because a lot of my friends at the time, they went to the bigger universities, Michigan State, Central Michigan, MSU, like all the party schools up there in the Midwest. I'd go out there on the weekends and have fun, but they were spending the money on the tuition. They had no clue what they were going to do.
Yeah.
And some of those guys, they came out with $250,000 in debt and student loans. And
silly.
It was very silly, especially when you don't know what you want to do and you're paying for it yourself.
Of course, yeah.
So, no, I had no idea what I wanted to do. Got my associates, and then I decided I wanted to get into something with healthcare. I thought initially physical therapy, because that was more well known. I was doing a little bit of personal training as well on the side.
Yeah.
It seemed like a natural progression, but the waiting period to get into one of those programs was a couple years. Wow. I didn't want to wait. I knew myself. Like if I took a couple years off, I might not come back.
I don't blame you.
So I found out, did some research and found out about occupational therapy and what that involved and what that entailed. And I was lucky enough to get in to a program, a nationally recognized program at Western Michigan University, and was able to get my bachelor's and master's there.
Oh, wow. Mm-hmm. So occupational therapy it's basically, in layman's terms, physical therapy in the sense that you help people do the things that they need to do on a daily basis and functionality, right? Is that what that is?
So the lingo, it's really activities of daily living, ADLs.
ADLs, okay.
Whereas a physical therapy might use a physical modality to, rehab somebody, like an exercise. I was more focused on, and we would do that. There was a lot of crossover between the two disciplines, but I was focused in, is there a functionality behind this? Like, it's not just you broke your leg, but how are you going to go to the bathroom? How are you going to transfer? How are you going to get your clothes on? How are you going to get in and out of the car? So we would use, we would do physical therapy too, some of the exercises to strengthen, but we would also do splinting. We would also use adaptive equipment, maybe slide boards, pulleys. We would, we would do everything from A to Z to get the functionality back. That was our primary concern.
Oh, okay. Now, When did acting come after all of this?
Yeah, acting. You know, I love movies.
Same.
I've always loved movies. And I had a lot of opportunities with the modeling to be in the background in a lot of films and a lot of things. So, you know, there's several films that I was in the back. I never said anything. I was an extra or whatever. But it really was like the spark that really wanted me to get in more into acting.
Yeah.
And coming out of college, and then really I didn't get into the acting until I was in my mid-30s.
Oh,
so
wow.
it wasn't like, and it was, like I said, it was all just kind of background stuff. There was a couple films where I got pulled out and I could be a bartender or something. And I could hand somebody a drink.
Yeah.
I'd get a one line and get a bump. In Texas, it's not a SAG state. So there's
not.
different rules in different states.
I didn't know that. So what is it?
It's
just not a SAG state,
it's just not a SAG state. So you don't have to have the same. The pay's different. You don't get the some of the benefits.
Oh, that's interesting.
But you know, a lot of productions will go to Louisiana or Texas because they don't have to adhere to those SAG rules.
So is it better in a sense? You know, if it's not a SAG
yes
state,
and no.
is it like a you know?
It's kind of the Wild Wild West.
Yeah, that's the terminology I was.
Well, that's why you got
for.
some of the new production. A lot of the westerns are coming back now. A lot of the like at Yellowstone and I don't remember that other one, 17 something.
Yeah, something.
They're filming a lot of stuff in Fort Worth, right around Dallas.
Okay.
Oil something is out of there now. The Tulsa King with Stallone.
Yes.
So a lot of stuff is in that Oklahoma, Louisiana, Texas region. I think Louisiana is a SAG state, but yeah, I didn't have to pursue and get that SAG card.
Which is probably easier for you.
Well, I needed to focus on that and really, because there's agencies that will represent you as an actor, and you really do need to go to these auditions again. And you know, whether you get a part or not, you got to spend the time. And for me, in my point, with my degree and the things that I was doing, I didn't have the time. Like some of these things I was showing up and I was getting a small part. People were camping out in their cars. They would drive here.
Wow.
They were living the life without having a life. And that wasn't the life that I wanted.
Yeah, of course.
I wasn't willing to pay the dues, and I haven't really gotten lucky enough to get noticed to get that premiere spot or part. So, you know, it's still something that I want to do. I've got a couple scripts that I'm reading now, especially coming out of COVID now. I'm starting to get more, but time is a premium. I got a 5-year-old. I got a booming business with Argos. I still do real estate. I'm like tri-coastal now. I'm like in Istanbul. I'm in Texas. I'm in France. So it's like, where do you get the time?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's 2 that I'm actually reading the scripts, and I'm actually working maybe even the production side of things, where it would be like a new production company from me, and then I would be a part of this in a different level than just an acting. And that I could see myself making the time for.
Yeah. It's all time. I mean, from the outside looking in, as an actor, I feel like you'd have to be all in or nothing at all. It's tough to do multiple things at once. Not that it's not possible, because lots of people and actors are doing multiple brand deals and all this stuff, and acting and making music and stuff. But to really, I guess, pursue it, you would have to really go all in.
Yeah, you'd have to really dedicate yourself and spend the time.
Yeah.
And then at that, the expense of other things.
Yeah, of course. So before I get into the fragrance stuff, tell me about your involvement with real estate, because not only do you own rental properties, but you're also a developer. This is the kind of stuff that like always interests me. How did you get into that lane of things?
Yeah, I've always been interested in a lot of things. Jack of all trades, master of none. But I always wanted to spread myself out as far as the things that I was interested in and the possibilities and the opportunities. So really, I didn't get into real estate until I moved to Dallas. And that was about 15 years ago.
Oh,
so
wow.
we're talking a little after 2008, after everything burst in 2008. So the market was really good for purchasing. So when I went to Dallas, I purchased 5 homes, single-family dwellings. But what I didn't know was, I didn't know Dallas. I didn't know what areas were good and safe.
Yeah.
I was picking up rent with a Glock. I was paying bums to sleep on the patio so people wouldn't, break in and steal all the copper.
Get the fuck out of here.
It was gutter when I was starting out. I was buying houses in Oak Cliff. If you know Dallas, I was Southside Dallas, Oak Cliff, Fair Park. Not the nicest neighborhoods.
Yeah.
But I was picking up houses for $18,000, $20,000.
Wow.
I was putting another $10,000 in, and I was renting them out or I was flipping them. But where I really started making the money was when I was doing the multifamilies. And what I had learned was, if I actually claimed that as my residence, I could put, maybe 5% down, purchase the house, get my mail there, and I'd get like a fourplex. And then by having 4 renters, they'd all tell on each other. So I'd always know what was going on. It wasn't like the single families where I'd show up one day and they got a pit bull.
Yeah.
Or they turned it into a trap house. Or they're subleasing the kitchen out to a catering company. I've seen it all. So the single family was a pain in the butt. The returns were not great.
Yeah.
And it was dangerous. It was just flat out dangerous.
Of course, yeah.
The multiplexes, and by then I was probably 3-4 years into it, and I had made a lot of mistakes. There was properties that, like I said, they'd punch a hole out of every wall outlet, get up in the attic. I was putting metal grates on the attic space so they couldn't even get into the attic. They were putting forks where the power meter was. I'd show up to get rent. This is all before Venmo and Cash App and all that stuff. So you'd have to physically show up. If they couldn't, I think Zelle was just getting started. PayPal was around, but a lot of people weren't using it yet. So I'd show up with the Glock to get the rent, and I'd look over at the power meter, it'd be glowing because they stuck a fork in it and they were stealing power.
Christ.
They could have burnt the place down. I'd kick them out. I would evict them. I'd have to go through that whole process. I'd go down to the city, paid the $300 application fee, show up to the court date. They wouldn't show up. And then, I'd win, but it would take another 60 days. I'd have to show up with a police officer. And by then, they'd robbed it. They'd stolen everything. So they'd steal the ceiling fans, every light bulb.
Jesus
They'd take the
Christ.
microwave, the refrigerator. Oh yeah, it was a learning experience. I took a lot of things on the chin starting out. But it's through those losses that you really learn.
Yes.
And I got into the multiplexes. Like I said, did that owner occupancy situation where I was putting 5% down, and then every year I'd buy a building. And I was just, slowly building up my real estate portfolio, buying buildings, but always keeping it under 4 so that I could still stay within that program.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so that's where it was. And then I accumulated like 4 or 5 buildings. And then fast forward, I got into, and really through Argos, through sourcing materials, because I have to source boxes, paper products, glass products, metal. And then building my own home, I figured, I'm just going to source my own windows. I'm not going to go through this manufacturer down the street that's going to charge me through the nose, or go to Home Depot and buy this cheap stuff. So I went right to where the manufacturers were overseas, and then through them I got to know the owners, and then I was like, let me make my own window. Let me make my own door. So now I'm supplying materials for builders. We're mostly doing commercial. We're not doing single families, but we're doing big projects like apartment buildings and hotels. Boutique hotels. We got a couple projects in Texas going on right now where we're doing several thousand windows and doors.
Jesus.
Yeah, and they're all top of the line, good quality stuff.
Wow.
So now it's a big part of what I do, but nobody knows about it.
Yeah, but it always interests me. I mean, the tenant thing and the rental properties always scared me because of that. Like, you're dealing with sometimes bottom of the barrel people. You're dealing with lunatics. Yeah. Yeah.
And now a lot of times what I do too is one of my tenants, I'll make them a property manager. I'll give them a little break in their rent.
Really?
They
like a super.
They oversee the building. They make sure that the renters are really there. They're not letting their whole family, extended family live there. Yeah. They're putting the trash out when they need to. They're doing what they're supposed to do as part of their lease agreements, and they're letting me know and keeping up with things because I travel so much. I can't be there. And then I've got, through my construction world that I'm in, I've got a couple different builders that can go over there and fix things when I'm out of the country, and they deal directly with the supers. So
that's great.
It's the only way that it's possible. Otherwise, I'd have to sell it all off.
Yeah.
And right now, I really want to keep the real estate that I have long term, pass it down, because they're not making any more land, especially where I have it in Dallas.
They're not at all. Speaking of that, I don't know if you're familiar with this area over here, but I'm on the railroad. I work on the railroad, and the amount of properties and massive apartment buildings that are being built along the tracks is absurd. I see new crazy building, multiplexes, whatever you call them, being built all over the place. There was just a bunch of townhouses built down the street and condos and buildings going up here and there. It's absolutely absurd right now.
Yeah.
So, you saying that there's not much, land, the land isn't increasing, it's decreasing.
Right.
So, yeah. So now it makes sense that that's what you're doing.
Yeah. And people want to be close to where they can get things and travel and, go to events and concerts in the mall and shopping and be with friends. They don't want to be like in Texas. We got a ton of land. But
a lot.
Nobody's building an hour outside of Dallas. Everybody's just building up and building up. So, that land value that I have is just going to be insane. Like I got one building 10 years ago for $180,000. I'm taxed at $1 million on that one.
Wow.
So I'm going to keep it and pass it down. I'm looking at the neighbors trying to see if I could buy theirs.
Wow.
So that I can get my townhouses now.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Then there's companies like, those large entities like BlackRock and stuff, they're buying everything.
And then they're going to control a lot of the housing sector in the market. They'll be able to force the price.
Yeah. It's absurd.
Supply and demand, yeah.
How did you get so business savvy? Is there anybody in your family, or was this just all trial and error within yourself and learning?
I think it's just something that's within us. And a lot of people don't know this, I'm actually adopted. So I've always been interested.
I didn't know that.
A lot of people don't, but I've always been interested too. What influences you? Is it genetic, or is it environmental, or is it a combination? I think it's definitely a combination. If you were to talk to my dad, he'd be like, I don't know this guy. I don't know what he's like. What are you doing with this cologne thing? Like, how is this even? He has no idea.
Yeah.
The money, the scale. Like even when I got my first, out of college, my first job, which was my only job because I've only worked for myself. I was actually hiring out. I started a staffing agency and started hiring my classmates that were graduating, and I was staffing them out to the nursing homes, to the home care agencies, to the hospitals. I was giving them all jobs. I literally had a job for 1 year out of college, and I've only owned my own businesses.
Wow.
It's because for me, I was always reverse engineering everything. Like, how does this work? Why are they here? Can I do it better? Because I'd always see the way that, things that weren't run right and how I would do it better. So I think that's just something that's in me. It's in my DNA.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's almost like you were born to do that in a sense.
And it's
wow.
It's a little ADD, and it's a little annoying to some people. But if you ever want me to analyze something and give you an honest opinion and feedback, just be ready.
Yeah. No, for sure. So I got a question for you. So smell and memory, they both go hand in hand.
Yeah.
And I think it's those certain moments, in one's life that, when a scent gets attached to a specific moment or a fond memory that like stains our DNA forever. Yeah. For instance, like the smell of your mother or grandmother's cooking growing up, these are like unforgettable memories tied to scent.
Yeah.
Whether it's your mother washing your clothes when you were a kid and that certain type of detergent and whatever.
Downy soft.
Yeah. Whether it's like an old man walking down the street reading the Sunday paper, and every Sunday you'd smell that tobacco. Yeah. You'd smell that stuff. Our olfactory senses are constantly firing off, always throughout our lives. And I think that's what makes the world of perfumery so beautiful, is the memories that these certain scents create for us that we use as almost our daily theme music as we're walking down the street, if you will. That change from time to time, like the tides of a shore, So with that being said, what moments in your life that you can reach deep back into your memory for that produced a smell to you that was unforgettable?
Mm-hmm. I still remember my dad's aftershave Splash Brute. I also have a little story with that too. I remember when he wasn't around going it, because I'd always see him tapping it, slapping it on his face. So I went in there, as a kid, 5 years old, going in there, grabbing that Brute and putting that in all that alcohol, because that's what it is, 99%. And then burning, getting it in my eyes and my nostrils, eating it, tasting it. Oh yeah, I did it all wrong. But yeah, that was a hard intro into the Brute. Yeah. And then my grandfather's polo. I remember when he was a pastor. He was a big guy, always a hugger, and I just remember him, just smelling that polo. Wow. And he's obviously passed, but those things, when I smell that and I see the Brute, even the green, that color and everything, it just brings me right back. So yeah, it's fragrance is one of those subliminal things. You know, they always say you remember 5% of what you smell, maybe 2% of what you see. It's one of those animalistic things that's in our DNA way, way back from when we were primates or whatever. Yeah. So yeah, it's the color really in our world. And it's just really heightened primal sense. So yeah, even if you don't think about it, it's there. It's around us. It's surrounding us. Our food, it helps us taste. You know, if you can smell something, you can taste it. When you grab a wine or a nice whiskey or whatever, you're smelling that. You're getting that full experience. You're missing out a lot of things if you're not smelling. And you know, that was one thing with COVID that was really scary for me, getting into perfumery as heavy as I am. I had COVID like 2 or 3 times, and I was just I was just thanking my lucky stars. I never lost my sense of smell completely. Right? Now there was one time where things were off, and I could tell, and that was really interesting to me. I didn't lose it like some people did, and some people didn't get it back for a long time. Yeah. Some people still haven't gotten it back, which I find fascinating. Yeah. And I don't know if there's some studies going on right now and on how that's working out with them and all that, but I still remember like I was getting a metallic smell for a lot of these these things that I was working on, and I really had to put a lot of things on hold. Shit. And that was right around 2021. Wow. And I was working on 3 or 4 things, and I was like, really, I should stop because I don't know if I'm going down the wrong path with a lot of these things just because my sense of smell is off. Yeah, yeah. You know, and that was a scary time because it's like, what else am I going to do? Am I just going to have to get another perfumer and outsource everything? Because, you know, it was a scary time, at least for the business, for the brand.
Yeah, it was very scary.
But nobody knows. That's just something I internalized. I didn't even really tell, my wife at the time that I was going through that because I was like, oh, shit. Yeah. This could be bad. And I always thought this is going to happen to somebody else, not going to happen to me. Yeah. But yeah, that's the long answer.
So is that, would you say around that time when you were smelling that brute and things of that nature, was that around the time you first fell in love with fragrance, or was there a particular moment where you realized I really love this stuff?
You know, some of the first fragrances I had were Obsession, Acqua di Gio, Dracanor, CK1. Wow.
I had all those.
Those were the classics. Yeah. But it was like, I'd always been into it just by seeing my dad and seeing my grandpa. But I really wasn't into the stories, into the advertising. And I think really for me, coming into the modeling world when I was 16, 17, and then, getting a little bit of money through college and working and then being able to buy things, then I saw the advertising side of things. And I'm a collector too. I know you collect, you got video games. You're probably a shoe collector too. There's a lot of collectors out there of things. Baseball cards. I was collecting baseball cards when I was growing up. Basketball cards, football cards, you name it. But I didn't really get into the collecting side of fragrance. There weren't a ton of options, really. Niche perfumery wasn't really around in the 90s.
No.
That's a relatively new phenomenon. Yeah. That's just kind of exploded. But yeah, I've always been into scents. I remember just being in the woods as a kid. I was growing up in Denver in the woods. Wow. And in Michigan, we had like 5 acres. We had woods.
Oh yeah?
So I was always digging up wood and catching salamanders and snakes.
I was just going to say salamanders under the rocks.
I was in the dirt. I was always one of those kids. I remember getting tetanus shots because I was stepping on nails and getting bit by gophers because I was catching them. I was doing so many stupid things as a kid. And that's one thing too, like, and we could get to that later, with kids now, having my own, it's like, babying them and not letting them do stuff. But I was like, man, I did so many things when I was a kid. I remember getting shot in the ass at school because I was catching gophers with a ball jar when they were popping out of the hole and they were chewing my hand off. There's a lot of fun things that we did as kids that I don't think kids today really get to do. And that might interact with their sense of smell too if they're not out in nature. When I was in Dallas, little side note too, and I never really thought about grounding, like actually having your feet on the ground in the grass and digging in the woods. And when I was a kid doing all that stuff, like I remember driving and going to see a patient and I was like working my ass off as a therapist and doing the real estate thing. I was coming home at 9, maybe hitting the gym at 10 and then getting up and repeat. But I wasn't getting out. I wasn't camping. I wasn't fishing. I wasn't going in the woods. I didn't have my shoes off in the grass. And I really missed that. And, now I'm getting to the point where my son's 5 and he's like, I want to go camping. I want to get a toolbox. I want to do this fun stuff. And I was like, okay, now it's time for me to relearn and do that stuff too. So, and that's all part of smell too, just being in the environment. And not being cooped up in a house, in a car, in a subway, and, not being outside.
Yeah, totally. I remember for me, when I first fell in love with fragrance, my parents separated when I was in first grade. So I'm really bad with math. I forget. I guess I would be 6 years old, right? First grade.
Yeah.
And my father had like this bachelor pad, if you will. I like to call it, because he had a roommate. Okay. So they lived together in an apartment when my parents separated. And I would have to go visit him on the weekends and things like that. And I don't know what it was. Like my mother and my father both loved fragrance. But the one fond memory that sticks out is my dad and fragrance. Because since he was single, he had a place, he had a bunch of fragrances. Like, 5, 6 was a lot back then. Yeah. Now we have hundreds each of us, and you probably have thousands. But, that's what it was. And I remember I used to go in, there was nothing to do in his house. It was like a bachelor pad. So everything was clean. Like there wasn't toys all around my dad's crib. It was more at my house. Mm-hmm. So like I would mostly be in his place just like temporarily until we went out and bowled or did whatever we had to do at a local arcade. And I remember sneaking into his room, like while he's in the shower and shit, and I would spray the fuck out of the room with like all his stuff. And there's 2 fragrances that always stuck out to me. The original Lagerfeld with that orange juice.
Okay.
And Jupe, which is, I guess, pronounced Yope. And I'll never forget those 2. So I could say those 2 started my love for fragrance, and it took off. That Yope is very synthetic and sweet and bubbly, but it's when I have an original bottle from the 90s, and when I smell it, it's just, and the Lagerfeld was such a masculine scent to me. I love that original Lagerfeld. So that's kind of when mine kind of started.
But isn't it interesting how much we can remember and like vivid? It's not just like a fleeting, like kind of, sort of, like you probably get taken back. Like I get taken back.
All the time.
Like it's almost like a dream.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
Remember my mother, what was interesting about my mother is, since she always liked fragrance, I remember being in middle school asking for them for stocking stuffers all the time. And she would always, how everybody does discounters now. Like that's like the thing.
Right.
My mother was onto that shit when I was in middle school.
Okay.
She was getting me bottles of Jean-Paul Gaultier, Aqua di Gio, all that stuff, like way before anybody was getting, she was getting me the big 6-ounce jump offs. It was I miss those times. Those were good. What are some of your favorite classic fragrances?
I think the Aqua di Gio and Cool Water were probably 2 of the most worn.
How could I forget about Cool Water?
Yeah, you can't forget Cool Water.
Oh my God, so
Classic.
good.
Yeah,
that's one of my favorites. Mm-hmm. And then I don't know if you read the Ghost Perfumer book by I forget his name, but it basically dives into Creed and how they weren't the actual perfumers behind some of the creations, such as Aventus and Green Irish Tweed. How Green Irish Tweed was done by Pierre Bourdon, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, and how Creed Aventus was done by Pierre Bourdon's assistant. So it's you should read that book. It's very interesting. But I like that one. Anyway, before you started your own fragrance house, you were a perfumer yourself, crafting stuff for other houses, people. I'm not really familiar.
So I have a lot of things in my life, I haven't done it in the traditional sense. So for me, it was really, I was in the modeling world at the time. This was somewhere around 2013, 14.
Okay.
And I was supposed to shoot for a big fragrance house. And long story short, they had paid the retainer fee. It was a couple weeks before the shoot, and then they ended up going with a local model.
Oh, okay.
But they paid the retainer fee, so I still got a little bit. I think my agent got 90% of it. I got a little bit. And then somebody had heard about it, and they asked me, well, can you create me a fragrance? And I was like, let me think about this. No, I can't, would be the short answer. But through my travels, I had met somebody from Morocco, and we had become friends, mostly through social media. And long story short, I went out to New York, and over a 2-year period, I made this guy who asked me about 7 fragrances. So I was really getting on-the-job training, and he was paying for all of it, him and his family, Greek guy. And I'd really been into Greek mythology, and he was Greek. So I started the brand Argos, and I really wanted, from the get-go, I was thinking always, like, I need to have my own brand. Like, what would I do if I could do whatever I want and someone paid me? Well, this was the perfect situation. So for me, Argos is really the birthplace of mankind, according to Greek mythology. So I started with the name Argos. That's the starting point. It's like the Garden of Eden. And he just ate that shit up. He loved it. So I made him, and he has the rights to those fragrances. Those have never seen the light of day as far as me. He's got those. But it's what got me started. And that was like a 2-3 year process. I didn't even release a fragrance publicly until I released the Pour Homme and the Pour Femme. And that was like 2018. Yeah.
So wait, you didn't, so Argos wasn't even technically a thing yet.
No.
This was something that you came up with through your imagination and your knowledge in order to sell yourself almost to this individual to potentially create a business for yourself.
It was totally created because somebody reached out to me, and I knew somebody who was in that space. And I told them, I said, this is the situation. I've got this guy with some money. He wants to know if I can create it. But here's the caveat. I want you to teach me. I don't want you to just arbitrage this and do everything for me. And then I take a little piece. I said, no, this is something I have interest in. And this might be my one shot at actually learning something and starting something that could be my own, and something that could be big. Because I'd always seen other brands. I'd always been on the modeling side of things. I'd never really been on the branding side of things. And I was like, if I could do it, what would I do? And it was like, I love Greek mythology. I think one of the first books I ever read was the Iliad.
Wow.
And Jason and the Argonauts, the whole claymation movies back in the 80s.
Yeah,
stuff,
of course.
That was my thing. And I was like, I could really take two worlds that I really enjoyed and see if maybe I could make a business out of this.
This is remarkable. You just threw me for a loop.
So
I had no idea.
I didn't even really make money. It was everything that I made would pay for my trips to New York and pay for, my friend to really work with me hand in hand on how the process works.
Holy shit. Yeah.
And I worked for him for about 6 years. I still talk to him occasionally. He's actually in New York.
Wow.
But yeah, that's how it started. And then I had Salt and Pepper reach out to create, Adam Levine reach out to create. I've had other stuff, but I got NDAs. I can't talk about it. But yeah, I'm known, but I'm not. It still blows my mind to this day.
You're blowing mine.
How they even know. Like Maya, have you heard of her?
What, the R&B singer?
Her manager reached out to create a fragrance. Yeah. So yeah, it was one of those things that just, and I had to be, I had to take that risk. Because again, this took time out of my days. It took months out of my life because I was doing therapy at the time.
Jesus.
And I had to fly to New York and, pay for my hotel and do that whole thing for 2.5, 3 years.
Wow. Mm-hmm. You're blowing my mind because not only did I not know that, but you really are a go-getter. Like in every sense of the word, you figure it out. You're a prime example of figuring it out.
I really think, if you have the passion, you really go get that know-how, there's nothing you really can't do as long as you're passionate about it.
Wow. That's absolutely remarkable. I had no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, you trained yourself in such a short amount of time. Yeah. There's some perfumers that, grew up in Gras and they were sitting there picking petals and smelling iris fresh.
And I'm still on the outside of a lot of that group. But now they kind of know about the brand, and I still go there. I go there several times a year now. Wow. So I'll be in Gras. I'll be in Nice. I've got an office in Nice. I've got an office in Muchins, which is right outside of Gras. And it is funny because we go to these little small village restaurants, and there's perfumer over at that table, perfumer over at that, and everybody's they're bringing in their clients from the Middle East or whatever, and everybody's looking at what they're doing and who they're working with, and then I'm sitting in the middle of it all. It's really quite cool.
Wow.
It's like being in LA at a restaurant. You've got, Jack Nicklaus or Keanu Reeves or somebody. It's like that over there, but in the perfume world.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's absolutely remarkable. Wow. I'm sorry, you just took me back.
It's quite interesting. But yeah, I'm still learning, still growing. If you've been a part of the Argos journey, you've seen a little bit of the progression, especially from the Pour Homme, Pour Femme.
Oh, yeah.
To where we're at now with some of the ingredients and some of the notes and the compositions, how detailed they are now.
Oh, yeah. I love them. I'm going to dive into them soon. I just have some technical perfumer questions for you, actually. I mean, since you were in this journey and you were learning with this guy, you said he was from Morocco, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The training of the nose, I would imagine, at that level when you're crafting your own formulas and things like that, can be very difficult in the beginning. I'm assuming you're smelling tons of raw materials and molecules for hours and hours.
Yes.
To familiarize yourself with them so you could pick them out at the drop of a dime. How was that entire process for you? And was there ever a moment during your process where you finally said, oh, now I got it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a lot of those eureka moments, and then there's a lot of failures. For me, it's easier to create a new formula than to fix a formula. I think my mind is more fluid when I'm starting from scratch than when I'm trying to fix something.
Yeah.
I'd almost just burn the place down and start over than to have to fix something that's just, something's just not right, or it's too muddled, or it doesn't have direction. In the beginning, to go back, I couldn't have enough space in my apartment. I still have photos back in the day on my IKEA glass tables with hundreds of little vials, and I'm just testing them one by one, getting familiar with some of these, like ISO-E, Ambroxan, Nrembol, some of these fragrance notes and synthetics and naturals and stuff. I just had to one by one with a pipette or with a little piece of paper, test them, get familiar, and then slowly put them in some compounds and some formulas and see how they would, and it would always blow my mind which combinations would work. But yeah, it was just a lot of trial and error, just a lot of grind for that initial setup. But having the lab in New York was very key in the beginning.
Huge.
Everything was there. You can't, especially back then when I was starting, you had Perfumer's Apprentice, you had a couple places that you could buy stuff online, but we're in the United States.
Yeah.
And frankly, it's tough to get good ingredients here. Now, another side of things, there's a lot of perfect storm. A lot of things had to happen for me to get where I'm at now. Little luck, but a lot of work, and you can't be shy. So like right now, a lot of the ingredients that I get are such high quality. Givaudan buys it, Guerlain buys it. We buy from them, Simrise. These are some of the big names as far as ingredients go, and even brands, fragrance houses, Guerlain. I'm basically part of a co-op of other perfumers. We, once a year, twice a year, we meet and we're like, okay, this is what I want to make. This is what I need. Let's see if we can, buy a big batch together, save some money, and then we save some of the ingredients and use it in other formulations.
Wow.
So it allows me to actually compete on a grander scale than some of these other houses that are just starting out that don't know anything. They outsource everything. They don't make their own things. They're not their own nose in any shape or form.
Of course.
Typically how that would work is you'd go to Maine or you'd go to, one of these houses that would make you your fragrance. They'd give you a questionnaire, a sheet, or some samples that nobody bought. And then you'd pick one of those already ready-mades, or you'd answer their questionnaire and they'd learn about what you like, and then they would formulate something for you, which, has its own inherent problems as well. You're not getting anything original. You're getting the bottom of the barrel stuff that other people don't want. And you're 2-3 years behind. You're not coming out with new stuff like, Sacred Flame and, the new stuff that I'm putting out. It's ahead of the market. Like that's some of the issues with some of the houses that are out now, the Creeds, the Clive Christians and stuff. They're like in a phase where they're kind of just replaying the greatest hits, maybe changing a couple things up, but they're not malleable in the way they're thinking. They're not really pushing the boundaries. They kind of got their base. People are going to buy their stuff anyways, and they're just not pushing the boundaries as much as they used to. Yeah,
totally. If you can you walk me through your creative process when you're crafting a formula for a fragrance? Like, what comes first? Is it one note in particular that you start with and you build upon? Mm-hmm. Or is it, an idea, or is it a particular theme or an emotion? What is your creative process when you're sitting down and you want to create this fragrance?
Okay. So the chicken or the egg, which comes first? And for me, it's very unique. I've really been, this whole scent explorer. That's why I'm here in town. And I think I said this to you. I really had to remove myself from the public space, from a lot of these Beauty World, Cosmoprof, Essence, all these things that I could be going to and meeting perfumers and smelling other people's fragrances. I took a 5-year hiatus from buying any fragrances, even smelling any other fragrances, which was a pain in the ass, because whenever I go to a boutique, they're shoving stuff in my face. Yeah. Or when I go out with friends, they're like, what am I wearing? It's like, I don't fucking know. I haven't bought in 5 years, I haven't bought a Tom Ford, and you got, all this stuff that I've heard of, but I don't know what it smells like.
Yeah.
I didn't want to pollute my own thought process and my own creative process with other stuff, Because then I'm thinking about, well, is it going to smell like that? Or are people going to think it's too much like this? So that was, for me, is what I had to do, because I wasn't on that level of, where I was confident that I already knew what Argos was. I mean, conceptually I did. But when it come down to the actual DNA behind the fragrance, the base notes, the things that I carry over that's through the line, it was a fluid process. But in the beginning, it was really, I did what other brands do. When you're working with somebody on a bespoke fragrance, you send out the questionnaire, you send out the samples, you figure out what they want. He didn't want to be a perfumer. He just wanted stuff for his own house, his own businesses. Money wasn't really an option. So it was like, really, I could just create something that smells great and he would love it. So I was very fortunate in that aspect. And that's what started and which really trained my nose. Now at this point, it's a combination. I've created enough things now that I could go back and revisit some of my own formulations. Some things never turned out the way I wanted them. They took me down a different road. Like I might have had a story, and from my acting and modeling background, we would storyboard things. Like if we do a movie, you'd storyboard that.
Yeah.
This is what the beginning, this is the plot, this is the antagonist, protagonist, and this is how it would work. It's kind of like that for me in the beginning with a fragrance. I have a story. Okay, that'd be cool to have one on, Bacchus. But that's the other cool thing. I didn't pigeonhole myself or back myself into a corner with the creativity as far as Greek mythology. There's so many stories. There's so many gods and legends, and there's even different versions of it. So I was lucky and I was smart enough, at least when I, thought of the brand, I didn't really put myself, like I have to create a fragrance now for Istanbul. If my thing is traveling or destinations, or my thing is just leather, that one note, and I have to make all these different fragrances based around leather. I never did that. Mine was always, the whole story was luxury. It was timeless. It was, when you think about the greatest civilizations in life and mythology in the start of civilizations, you think of ancient Rome, Greece, and everything's fantasized. So for me, it was I started out by storyboarding, but initially it was that, sending some samples to that initial person and the questionnaire. But now, after I've probably got 40 different fragrances right now at various stages of completion. Triumph of Bacchus was actually my greatest triumph, which part of it got its name from that because it was one of my greatest failures. I probably took 3 years to make that one because
really
it was so muddled. It didn't have direction. It wasn't focused. It was, think about, you got sandalwood, you've got, so many strong notes. You've got the peach, you've got the rum, you've got the booziness, you've got the apple, you got the saffron. You got all these strong notes. And, when I was putting it together, it was so muddled to me. I didn't want to release it. It was one of those things that I overdid it, and I actually went back to one of my top 5 or one of my previous 5 creations, initials, and I was like, that was it. And I didn't realize it at the time. My nose wasn't mature enough, and I was always trying to outdo myself, and I just did too much. It was one of those things where I did too much. So long story short, there is no one way at this point for me. I have so many that I've started that I can go back to, and I'm always getting reminded of them when I'm working on other ones. And sometimes the story changes because the fragrance goes down a different road, or it doesn't remind me of what I initially thought. The main thing is that I'm working on something. I always got to be working on something and having it, because the story will come to me.
Yeah.
And if whether it's a home run and it lines up with that story, that would be great. But it's never, that's 10%. Most of the time, I'm creating something and it's an accident. And then I come back to it. And that's what ends up being, the sacred flame, or the Charon's veil, or Chiron's veil, however you want to say it. It's really a combination. And at this point, I'm lucky enough to have so many different things that I'm working on that I'm not stuck. It's just always pushing forward. And even if one that I really want, I don't force it. I just pick up where one left off, or I follow that new note, or whatever that composition is, and I take it to the next level. So right now, I'm really in a great space. Like I feel like the next 5 years, like the train's left the station. I really, like now I was telling you, now I can step out and I can buy fragrances again. I can try Creed. I can try, like I was at Bergdorf's the other day and I'm trying everything like my son, I was a kid again. I'm trying all these fragrances. Of course, keeping my opinion to myself. Yeah. I didn't want to hurt anybody's feelings.
Yeah.
But yeah, now it's more fun to see, because I was always a fan of the brands as far as what their story was, how their bottles were. I was always trying to see like, okay, they got a magnetic cap. How does that work? They've got their embossed, debossed, their bottles, their stories. What's the concept? But now I can actually, did they really connect it? Is it really portraying that emotion or the name of that fragrance? So now I'm getting the full picture and really seeing that aspect. So it's fun. And now I'm going to the expos like Scent Explorer, and I'll be in Essence in February. I'll do the Cannes. I'll do Pity. So now I can actually go out and meet some people again and have some fun. Because I'm confident in the brand. I've got enough knowledge in my wheelhouse, and I've got so many compositions that I'm working on. I don't feel like I need to be influenced by anything.
Yeah. I think what's also important is you're constantly a student to the game.
Yeah.
You're constantly observing, being judgmental in a professional way.
Right.
Just to, I like what they did here, but I don't like this. I like that portion of this. I like the cap they put, but I don't like this. And just kind of taking influence and just study in general and taking the knowledge in and just combining it into your own beautiful, fragrance house that we have today, which we're going to really dive deep in soon. But knowledge is infinite, and it's very important.
I will always be a student of life, a student of perfumery, marketing. I mean, look at everything that's changing now with AI and all the clone houses that are out, and the packaging and the marketing and just the social aspect of fragrance and niche perfumery as a whole. I mean, you can't sit back and just observe and not be a part of it and learn and go experience.
Yeah.
It's always going to evolve.
Yeah. And I think that now, like, fragrance is at a point where it's so massive and so popular with everybody. It's like, it's becoming this. It's kind of like, I'm a fan of music, right? And hip hop when I was growing up is nowhere near as big as hip hop is now. And it's kind of like fragrance to me is kind of getting to that point where it's shifting, where it's becoming beyond global, where I'm seeing young kids on my train. They get on my train and they reek of shit. They don't know what they're fucking doing. They're just obsessed.
They're taking a bath.
And then they're smelling me, like 14-year-old kids would be like, oh, your cologne smells good. And it's like something that a kid would never even normally experience, very high end, very niche and very risky. But they're appreciating it because their nose is getting better without them even knowing it, because they're smelling all these different things. And it's a weird time, I think, for fragrance.
It's amazing. It's a worldwide phenomenon. Like, I told you I went to Vietnam. I have a new distributor there that and I say new, it was 2 years in the making. It didn't just happen overnight, but we did a launch party for Argos. And, I was amazed at how many people had even smelled Argos in Vietnam.
Wow.
And it's like that. And, remember when the United States was pulling out of Afghanistan and people are hanging onto the wheels of airplanes, getting dragged, that week I had a distributor buy $250,000 of a fragrance. And I'm thinking, I remember just messaging them, do you still want to place your order or do you want to cancel? No problem. You can back out.
Wow.
Oh, no, we knew about this. We knew this was going to happen. Send the fragrance. I'm like, is the Taliban wearing my stuff?
Yeah.
Is it currency over there now? I mean, if you go to Kabul right now, there's an Argos billboard. If you go to Malta, there's an Argos billboard. And I didn't pay for that. It's just catching on.
Wow.
The distributors, they're selling it, they're loving it, and for me, I'd like to think it's because of the fragrance, the juice is that good, and the story. It connects on so many different levels. For me, it was always meant to be luxury to the nines.
Yeah.
It was nothing cookie cutter, white label, minimalistic, recyclable. It was none of that. You want to go get polyurethane leather? Go somewhere else. You want to go get a white label bottle? Go somewhere else.
Yeah.
I was always going to put every effort into the creativity behind the name even. I mean, you can't even pronounce, and most people can't even pronounce the name. And I love that. Have fun with it. Say it wrong.
Yeah, right?
That's half the fun. At least, it gets them thinking about, how do you even say this shit?
Yeah.
And then you got other brands saying, oh, this is sexy time. Or I was like, jubilation or guidance. And I should... Yeah.
Are you talking about amouage stuff?
Yeah, and to me, and that's great to associate a fragrance with an emotion. I understand that. But to me, it's epic. It has to be epic. I mean, Charon's veil, it's a play on words. It's multi-meaning. Veil, there's like 4 different meanings for the word veil. Sacred flame, it doesn't smell like a burning flame. It's a glowing ember. And it's all about the story about this Titan who stole fire from the gods to really, give mankind a chance. And it was that glowing ember that I really wanted to portray. And that's what I did with the notes and the combination with that one. And then with Charon's Veil or Chiron's Veil, it was the progression of a rose dying. It was life to death. It's the whole passage because he's the ferryman of the dead to get the souls across the river Styx. So, it's kind of cool now because people really want to know the backstory.
Yeah.
If you're going to pay the money to have a full experience, is just so much more appealing and satisfying. It's just satisfying.
No, I love it myself. I personally love the whole, when something feels more than just a thing. When it's like it has a whole backstory, it has this whole meaning and drive and passion behind it. Anything is always received better that way as opposed to just giving something as it is what it is,
Yeah.
Are there any particular ingredients or materials in general when, you were learning or even to present day that you absolutely despise, not only working with, but the smell of them in general about said materials irritates you?
I would, at any point, I would have said yes in the beginning. But now, like this is a journey for me. My nose is changing, evolving. I wasn't a big proponent of using oud. I mean, I used it in Baccio Immortale, which was probably like my third generation of fragrances that I released.
Which I was smelling it last night. I love that fragrance.
For me, the concept behind that one, and that was back when I was really learning a lot in storyboarding, before I had so many that I was working on that they could have been any story. I was really thinking, okay, I need a summertime oud, and I'm not a big heavy oud Middle Eastern. I don't like incense. I don't like some of these heavier notes yet, which has changed. Now that I'm in Turkey and Istanbul, I mean, it's in my face, and I love it. I'm not a big incense guy yet.
Me either.
But I love oud. And in the beginning, I really couldn't decipher what was Vietnamese, Cambodian, Middle Eastern, Indian. Like I had no clue. It was just loud, dirty, obnoxious, and then now my palate has changed and I can pick out, like when I was in Vietnam, my wife was like, what are you doing? I'm going to all these little podunk places in these back alleys, like a drug dealer looking for these ouds.
Wow.
These rare ouds. And now I have a huge collection and I've got them all categorized. And it's like this whole subcategories of things that I never even wanted to have under my nose. Wow. That I'm appreciating. And I hope that's the case for a lot of people too, is that, your tastes will change and you can just let it go, just let it flow, try things out. A lot of people say, I don't like rose, yet they've got Adonis Awakens, they've got Love Triumphs Over War, and now they love Chiron's Veil. Those are rose fragrances.
Yeah.
But, you can use rose in different ways. It could be a top, it could be a middle. You could almost argue for it to be a base, depending on the composition. You got tough, powdery rose, Middle Eastern style rose. You've got Bulgarian rose, Turkish rose, and the distillation process is all part of it too. They could throw the whole stem, the green, the leaf in with the petals. I'm learning more about tinctures now and different distillation process, the CO2, the steam, and I want to get into that too. That's kind of like the next phase for me. I've got a 13,000 square foot warehouse now in Dallas that I just purchased this year, and I'm actually thinking about getting into distilling some of my own ingredients.
Oh,
and
shit.
I was actually part investor in a project that was indoor greenhousing for produce. And I'm thinking, in my mind, I could create roses now and manufacture them indoors, have everything, controlled, climate controlled, computerized, everything, and just grow some of these ingredients in-house and start distilling. Now that's, 2, 3, 5 years down the road. But that's where my thought process is now. In the future.
You're a go-getter.
Yeah. And especially being in Turkey.
Wow.
You've got the Helfeti rose. That's one of a kind in the world. You've got Turkish rose. You got Romania just above. You've got, Damask rose. You've got Bulgarian rose. And there's all these things now that I have at my disposal. I mean, it's the Spice Trail, Turkey.
Wow.
That was another thing too with me being able to travel. Now my eyes and my palate, my nose are so much more open than just being here in the United States.
Wow.
So that's been a huge part of my evolution, is just being able to live abroad. And I was telling you too, I was just getting my Turkish citizenship. I have a villa there now, so I'm spending almost 6 months out of the year. And it's really close because I can be anywhere in two hours. I can be to Nice and be at my office.
Unreal.
So the future is great. Everything is primed. And I really wanted to have Turkey because it's right in the CIS region. So anything that ends in Stan, Afghanistan, Uzbekistan, Turkmenistan, anything with a Stan, I can work with. You know, you understand? So, and then I've got the office in France, which is for Europe, and then I've got Dallas, obviously, for North and South America. So I don't remember what your question was.
No, it started with a particular ingredient that you despised, that
I didn't
you didn't
like
working,
neroli. I didn't like, which I did use in my pour-homme. But there, you know, what I say to people too is don't pick a particular note or ingredient and say and just write it off, because there's different formulations, different ways of using it, different types of, like I said, for rose, for example, even sandalwood, Mysore sandalwood. There's Australian sandalwood, Indian sandalwood. It's like wine. If you're a sommelier into wine, even just an aficionado, just you like whiskey or whatever, the soil matters, the temperature matters, even the season matters, the year.
Yeah.
It's just it's magic. That's one of the things that I loved about perfume. Was it's basically alchemy and magic. It's changing. It's temperamental. There's new stuff. It's not static. This is going to change and evolve.
Yeah, I mean, you said before how you originally did not like oud.
Nope.
I am currently I'm kind of like getting over that fine line.
You will.
But I'm the same way. I'm not really into animalic smells. Mm-hmm. And you also mentioned how you weren't really into incense. I'm the same way.
Yeah.
But there's certain fragrances that include it, real, because there's a lot of fragrances that are fraudulent that don't actually have oud, but they claim to. Mm-hmm. It's like, I guess, the synthetic form of it or whatever the case may be. But I'm starting to, a little bit, like you said, your tastes mature. And after time, smelling many things, you might go back. Like I buy a fragrance, I'm like, oh, that's gross. And 2 years later, I'll go back, like, ooh.
Yeah.
I remember when I first smelled your Bacio Immortale. Yeah. I smelt it.
I love the way you say it too.
I liked it. I enjoyed it. But I was like, I don't know if I could wear this yet, because I have a sample. I don't even have the bottle, but I have a sample, and I put it aside. But then last night, I knew you were coming. I'm like, you know what? I want to smell this again. Yeah. And me and my wife fucking fell in love with it. She was laying in bed reading her fucking thing, and I spray sprayed on my hand. I was like, here, smell this.
And you know, for that particular, again, this initial storyboard in my head was summertime oud, and it was like me pushing myself to use an oud, an agarwood, a light, very light. And even with, you know, Hiron's Veil, people, you know, some of these oud and these natural, they're like, oh, I hate that Argos used some synthetics and the composition is like, it needs to be all. I mean, go then buy Nemean Lion then. Like I tell people it's the whole, you know, thing with, you know, when I started the Artist series, it was another level of that onion that you got to peel back. So now not only is it Greek mythology, there's artists in history that have painted great works based on Greek mythology. And why did they do it? So now, you know, I did the one on Gustav Klimt. And, you know, I did Pallas Athene, and she's standing there in a pose, and she's got what looks like Nike, the symbol for victory, but it's really a symbol for Nudus Veritas, which is another painting that Klimt did, which basically, if you boil it all down, means if you try to appease the world, you'll never be satisfied, because you can't appease the world. So what you should do is make the best version of what you can for yourself, and then by default, you're going to be putting forth the best product. And that was a real symbolic thing. That's why I put that in that plaque. And I've got Hercules battling Triton in the back, and there's all these little Easter eggs in there that nobody even knows unless you're a real geek about it, which I love.
But that's the good shit.
And I do it on the box artwork and even on the new luxury atomizers. There's little things in there that will, you know, kind of celebrate the things that I've done and kind of allude to some things that are yet to come. And that's the fun part for me that people won't even get for maybe 2-3 years down the road. And then they might look back and be like, oh, okay, now it makes sense.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, there's a lot of ingredients that I didn't like, but my palate wasn't ready, and I didn't know what I was smelling.
Yeah.
And then now I can get the nuances. Now I can get 20 different versions of the same ingredient, and I can say, oh, okay, you know, I get where this is from, this region, and why it's special, and how it's going to work in this formulation.
Yeah.
So yeah, there was definitely a lot of things, but now I would say less and less, because now I can appreciate those subtle nuances more.
Totally. So now I have another question regarding iterations of a particular formulation. Sorry, I'm a nerd, so I like to learn these things. Obviously, you said generally you have many ideas out, and then they're not ready yet, or you go back to them, and you kind of bounce back and let it happen organically and naturally. Mm-hmm. With that being said, obviously fragrances have many iterations before they're done.
Right.
Right. And that's one thing that I thought was cool about Kayali, however you pronounce it, is she puts the amount of iterations it took to come to the final form of that fragrance at the end of each fragrance. I thought that was very interesting.
Like a Chanel 5.
It was kind of cool to me. So with that being said, what is the most amount of iterations or tries or attempts at a formula that you've done for a particular fragrance?
Okay, I'll say this. It's 2 years minimum before a fragrance is done from conceptualization or some form of being done or starting to where it's ready to be, on the market. And I'm working on the box artwork. 2 years minimum. The most renditions, I would say, would be Triumph of Bacchus, because that was a 3-year process, and that was something I literally had to forget about because I was driving myself insane by trying to make it better when it was better on number 5.
Number 5.
And I remember one time I went to a Christmas party, and a lot of times people don't know it, but I bring some samples around. And I'm, try this, and everybody's my guinea pig when I go to these, and sometimes people get a little perturbed. But anyways, I sprayed Triumph of Bacchus, and I still remember one of my jeweler friends, really respected in the fashion community. And he's like, "That's terrible. That's terrible. What is that?" I said, "Oh, I don't know. I was trying another brand out. I just want to see." I didn't even claim it as mine. But that was actually that was the final. That was the one that I ended up releasing, which was a very interesting point. Is you can't always rely on other people to give you the answers.
Yes.
You got to be able to be confident in yourself and what you're doing. And especially if you're working on it day and night, you're not sleeping and you're fantasizing about this, you're just like obsessant. But yeah, had I listened to him and been just like, fuck, forget it, shelf it for another 3 years.
Wow.
Who knows where Argos would have been now? Because that's the gateway drug really into the brand. Is Triumph of Bacchus.
I'm wearing it right now. That's like
I'm wearing
my
it now
favorite
too. I'm wearing
shit.
the X-Straight. So it's like, it's just funny how the universe works and things turn out. But, there's certain things that hold true. And one of those is you cannot rely on everybody to give you the answers.
Correct.
Because a lot of times if you're putting the work in and you're passionate about something and you have a working knowledge about it, you probably are one of the best resources.
Yeah.
So you got to trust yourself at some point.
It's your idea, right?
And that's what
your inception.
That is one of my mottos now. And that's why I'm finally buying other people's fragrances and going to these expos and trying things out.
Yeah.
Of course, holding my tongue and my opinions, keeping it to myself, being nice. But still, I'm confident in the brand and where it's going. And, but I went through that process.
Yeah, totally. Who are some of the perfumers that have inspired you the most? And what are some of your favorite creations from memory that changed your life after initially smelling them?
I'm at a kind of a loss on this one because I took such a long break away from other brands and trying things. But I still go back to Acqua di Gio, Morales, and some of these other perfumers. But that was back in my adolescent days. And I only say that because that's what got me interested and got the muscle memory, so to speak. But I really don't pay attention.
No, I understand.
I don't smell. I mean, I hear the names. I know who's working with who. And like I said, when I'm in France, I see who's there in town and who's shopping what around. And but it's really kind of a thing where you got to, at least in my creative space, is I'm like I said, I'm just stepping out and trying other people's stuff. Like I just bought like 7 Amouage fragrances.
Wow.
And I bought like 10 Creeds, and I have yet to even try all them.
Wow.
That's why it bugs me to death when people like show up at parties and they know what I do and they're like, "What am I wearing?" I said, "I have no fucking clue. I don't smell other people's stuff."
Yeah.
And I'm
just because I like fragrances, I have to fucking know everything.
Well, I just don't know what that formulation would smell like. I could look at you and I could probably guess you're a Creed or you're a Tom Ford guy.
Quintessential look.
Yes, I could look at you and I could probably be more accurate than smelling it.
Yeah.
Just in the way you dress and the way you're carrying yourself. Which is a cool aspect of things anyways.
Of course. Yeah. Individuality and things of that nature. I love Alberto Morales. Mm-hmm. He's one of the GOATs. And Acqua di Gio changed my life for sure.
That is the one, really. Yeah. That was my mainstay. No matter what I tried, I always had the Acqua di Gio. that was when it was just one Acqua di Gio, I think.
Yeah.
Now they've got so many, and I really, now that I'm starting to purchase again, I haven't bought any designers, but I really need to buy some of the Guerlains, and I need to buy some of the Calvin Kleins and the Obsessions and the Acqua di Gios, and the Sauvages.
Guerlain is interesting because it's...
Well, they've got different levels too. They've got their more designer, then they've got their more niche level, which I really appreciate that.
Yeah. I mean, when I smell their designer stuff, to me, it still has like that niche backbone to it. That's a house that's been around for hundreds of years.
Yeah.
Guerlain. So yeah, very interesting stuff. So now I really want to dive into Argos, and we have been touching on it throughout this interview, but you started Argos in 2018. That's
when the world kind of came to know, but not even is on a micro level. Yeah.
It's heavily based on Greek and Roman mythology. Absolutely. Obviously, we talked about it already. What made you? I know you described before. You talked about how you met the guy in Morocco, and you came up with this. What was the actual defining moment that made you leap and actually say, "I'm actually going to put this in print, if you will, and make this official now"?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I got the trademark, I got the logo and everything. I mean, I did all the legalese stuff because I'd always been in real estate, so I wanted to make sure that I was protecting myself. And I was making a lot of fragrances for this one particular person, and I wanted to make sure that I was protecting myself and building something and doing it the right way. And that's all. That's one thing that's different about me that I would say than a lot of other perfumers is I actually have done everything, and I still do a lot of everything. I still pour, I still bottle. We do a lot of stuff by hand.
Really?
The plates are put on by hand. We don't even have a machine that runs everything through and automatically fills it. No, we fill it all by hand. We measure it. We have one of those lab pumps that you can actually set it to what exactly 100 ml or 30 ml because we have the two sizes. We do the crimp by hand. We've got a machine. It's pneumatic.
Wow.
We set that thing and make sure we have the right PSI and there's so much that I wanted to be real scientific about stuff. Like I needed to know how many crimp points. I needed to know how deep the fennel was on the neck. I wanted to make sure that the collar had vertical catches and horizontal catches so that it would hold just right.
Please dive into that. I'm a nerd, man.
The only time I made mistakes, and I'll tell you this, is when I listened to other people. Oh, you want to make a bottle with that much glass, that thick, that heavy? You can't do it. It's too costly. You can't ship it, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Well, that was when I released that first cube, when I first came out, which was like, I hated it. And I was like, I designed my own. I printed it. I can do that. Like, I know how to do that. I printed off a 3D model. I've got a printer. Like, even the laser engraving that I do, I can do that myself. I learned it. I know how to use EasyCAD. I'm a nerd too.
CAD guy?
Oh yeah, yeah. I know what a JPEG, a PSD. I know what all these files are, and I can do all that.
Vectors and whatnot.
Yeah, vectors. It's a pain in the ass because there's a learning curve, and I was like, what am I doing? I should be paying somebody to do this because I'm making this much. No, that's not the point.
Yeah.
If I had paid somebody to do everything from me, then I wouldn't be as authentic, and I wouldn't have the brand that I have now. Wouldn't have my own warehouse. I wouldn't have my own formulations. I wouldn't have my own crimping machine, my own UV laser. Like all that stuff. Like if I were to sell Argos as a brand, I'd have to think you'd have so much more value built in because I have the real estate, I've got the equipment, I've got the formulations. I don't know what some of these other brands are doing as far as like they've got another perfumer, they've got somebody else that bottles, they got somebody else that distributes, they got somebody else that ships. Like I have my own DG. Like I read the manual, IATA, I'm certified. I renew it every 2 years or 3 years or whatever it is.
God bless.
I know how to do this because in order for me to teach somebody else or depend on somebody else to do it, I have to know just enough so they can't screw me over or feed me a line of BS.
I could totally relate to that. I do everything myself.
Yeah, so I've had people do that, and I'll just gloss over and like, nah.
Yeah.
No, you can't do that. So I don't remember what your question was exactly, but I think it was when I decided to release the brand public, I knew there was a point when I was done making fragrances for that first gentleman. I had worked on some other stuff that I didn't want to give him. It was my secret, like the good stuff.
Yeah.
And that's another reason why I won't work with other people. I've had people reach out. Some fashion houses have reached out now. I had a nightmare situation 2 years ago where I got approached by a bigger brand to fix something. And I think I'd said it, fixing something is worse. It's like my worst nightmare.
You already said previously, that's one thing you don't want to do is fix. So that's it's on brand for what you would do.
So, and I did that one time and that was a nightmare. And the whole thing about that was I felt like, once I agreed to it, I felt like they owned me. And that's one thing I'm not used to because I've always worked for myself, owned my own brands, had my own, and I was like, okay, I got a taste of what it is to be under somebody's thumb and I don't want to be there. So when I had the Pour Homme and the Pour Femme, that was really, me, like, that was like the introductory to stuff that I really wanted to do. I had some other stuff that was more, it was deeper, it was more nuanced.
Okay.
But I felt like that this would be the perfect 2 fragrances as the gateway into niche. I knew I didn't want to be into the designer world. And at that point, I had Dillard's and Macy's reps reaching out to me.
Really?
Oh, yeah. But they were like, oh, you need to get your price point down to $89 or $80. I don't remember what that threshold was. And it was like, wow. I remember thinking. Like,
but they'll sell La Roja for $2,000.
Well, they were like, we could move this many units. And I was like, well, looking at it. And I was like, okay. But that's not what I was. And it was like, you don't want to sell yourself short either. I remember when I first told some of the people that I knew in Dallas that I was getting to the fragrance space and they didn't know what I was doing and all the work that I was really putting in. They thought I was just, getting it from somebody else and doing the whole thing where they did everything. And I was just putting my name on it. But I wasn't naive in the fact, like, who am I? I'm not going to put Christian Petrovich. It's not me. This is something bigger. And I want it to be something bigger. I wanted this to be like a legacy type of brand.
Yeah.
And just being true to that and staying, they were like, oh, I got a friend that sells perfumes on Harry Hines, which is like, it's like Chinatown, like, I'm not going to do that. And I was really offended starting out that they would even think that that was my approach to this. Like, oh, you should go on Amazon. And I'm like, what? No, that was never the thing. Like, look at the bottles that I want to design. Look at the, the stuff, the stories. Why would I spend this much time and detail and waste my life on something that I didn't care about and I was willing to pimp out for $1, So when I was meeting with those initial buyers, nobody knew who I was, and I was happy that people were at least, reaching out. But I could have taken the bait, could have switched the bottle up to something cheaper, but then I would have had to dumb down everything, including the formulations, because, some of these things are, $80, $100, $200 a pound. And look at some of the roses. It's, $25,000 a kilo. It's the top of it's the creme de la creme of as far as the ingredients that I use. I really have to, forecast this stuff. This needs to sell. It can't sit on a shelf. This needs to go out and it needs to sell. And I don't have the luxury of creating something that's not going to sell. That's the danger of doing what I do. And there's got to be some danger.
Which I think you like. I bet you like to entertain danger.
I do, but I also don't like. I don't like little wrenches that get thrown. Now it's inevitable, and that's life. How you adapt to these things, and that's how some people survive in life, and some people that don't. You got the CEO that jumps out of the window. Something happened, the stock tanked. That shit happens to me every day. You have to be bipolar in some in some aspect to be in this business because
totally,
things are going to happen. You're going to get hit with an import fee. I'm looking at these tariffs now with Trump, and I'm thinking, oh my God,
I'm going to get fucked.
That's another 30% on top of 30% or 25%. That I'm like, okay, how am I going to do this and afford this? And am I going to be able to build it into the price? And everything has, even the price structure that I come with now, I could be selling it at a higher price point. I know I can, but I'm never going to go back. I built it in there so that I could build a brand and at least make it accessible in the niche space for people to get a bottle. And then they can get us, like I was telling you, we have like a 30% reorder rate, which is insane.
Oh, that's
when
remarkable.
I started out, it was like 2 or 4%, because nobody knew about the brand, and I didn't have as many fragrances. And that's another reason why I don't put out 10, 20 fragrances a year. I could. But look at the time and the effort and the thought process that go into every single one of these and the detail and the artistry. I'd like to think that, even if you're a fan of the brand and you have it, there's still things you're going to discover about this fragrance that you purchased from me a year, 2 years down the road.
Absolutely.
I've had people sell the fragrance that they bought from me because initially they were like, okay, it's not something I'm going to wear every day. And they're like, fuck, I should have kept that. And they end up buying it back. It's a journey for me, but one thing that's never going to change is the conceptualization, the thought process, the detail, and it's that whole concept of, this is bigger than me. This is something that's history. Yeah. This is like in our DNA, in our blood. This is like our lineage. This is Greek mythology. This is legendary. This is mythic. And that's never going to change.
Never.
Nope.
And that's, I got to say, I don't wear hats ever, but I tip my hat to you because you don't know a lot of the weird side things I do probably, but the number one thing to me is quality, passion, and importance. And I'll lose money before I'll put out a subpar product or something garbage. So when I first received the package from you, I bought Triumph of Bacchus in 2020.
Okay.
I think.
So
is that when it first came out?
2020, yeah. 2019, 2020. I think it was Christmas of 2019. I did a pre-launch.
I think that's when I bought it. I think that's when I bought it.
Okay.
So I bought it. And what sold me, to be honest, before I even read the notes, was the bottle.
Yeah.
Because I have a high attention to detail. And when I just looked at that thing and the 3D embossed placard on the front, the thick, beautiful glass, the cap, the beautiful painting on the box. You have a gloss card stock, the foil, debossed logos and stuff like that. I'm just like, this is where I need to invest my money in. And when I got it, you could ask my wife. I said, look at this fucking bottle. Number one, I could kill somebody with this
You know what
thing.
you got, though. Like,
Exactly.
Look at it. It's like, you know what you're getting. I mean, a lot of times you're like, I spent $300, $400, $500, and it's the whole line looks the same. They might have like a graphics that's a little different on the front, or it's like one of those peel away stickers or something. But it's like, this is art within art within art.
Yeah.
I wanted to create that whole, like, what you're getting. This is an investment piece. It's one of those things that you want to share with other people and you want it displayed. It's not something that you just want to hide away in your, you want to take care of this. But yeah, no, that's music to my ears because that's everything that I wanted to have in this fragrance. And that's, the other end, hearing it back is great.
No, totally. I mean, when I have friends come over, I have testing strips and they, know, because the majority of my friends aren't into fragrance. I'm kind of alone. So
get them into fragrance.
No, they're into it a little bit, but when I have conversations like this, actually, I've been begging and praying for somebody to talk to about fragrance on this podcast because I just haven't been able to. So I'm very thankful for you to be here. But when I got that bottle of Triumph of Bacchus and I just held it, I love holding things that I could really see the work. I could feel the work. You know what I mean? It's like it's a different experience and a different feeling when you actually have it in your grasp. Your fingerprints are pressing on it, and you could just feel the quality, feel the work, feel the story, and then you spray it and you smell that journey. I mean, there's nothing that can replace that feeling.
You've got the 2020. I mean, you don't know this unless you've got a recent bottle, but the evolution, the technology, the science that goes into this. Like, I have my own proprietary atomizer now, which I didn't have in 2020.
Yeah, I was going to tell you, your atomizer changed because I have Danier. Is that pronounced correctly?
Danier.
Danier.
Yeah.
Whatever. Danier.
I love it. Say it however you want.
Yeah. I have Danier, which I fucking love. I wore it the other day at work.
Yeah, and I've had people say
they don't
love patchouli, but they love Danier or Danier. Like, it's fucking patchouli bomb.
Yeah.
So
for sure, but it's good.
Yeah. But yeah, that's about 2020. I remember sitting in the scent room. I was talking to Deborah, who's the owner at the scent room, which was one of the first boutiques that really was like, we want to have Argos here. We love the whole thing. And I sat down, I presented it to her, and I was like, yes, I'm in a boutique now. Now I can brag that I'm in a freaking boutique. And now I can't, like, I'm on a 6-month hold off before I can even get into anything because I got to supply. We can't keep up with the orders that we got.
Wow.
But it's like, I don't mass produce things to a level where I can't change things. Yeah. So I really figured out how many crimp points, what's a 13 mm, a 15 mm, a 17 mm neck. What is microatomization? How much is actually dispersed on every spray? What's a pressurized atomizer? What's a crystal dip tube that disappears and you can't see it after the first spray?
Wait. Crystal dipped tube? Mm-hmm.
Now,
please fill me in.
Don't get literal on that. When I say crystal, I mean it gets crystal clear.
No, that's fine.
It's still a plastic material that disappears, though. You don't see it. And for me, like the aesthetics were the point.
Oh, there's some Dior bottles that you can't see the stem. That's
after after that first spray, you can no longer see and for me, it was important because I had that plaque. And for a moment, for a little while, I had another reverse decal that went on the other side of and you might have it if you have the old Denier. I did away with that because it was an issue with, it was like so technical. We had a double-sided decal that was metal that you had to peel on both sides, stick it, and then you had to glue the metal. And the metal was so heavy from the 3D printed plaque.
Yeah.
And then we did the enamel, which even made it heavier. It was starting to pull. And I only had like 1 or 2 issues, but I was like, nope, we're done. I don't want to have any customer service. I don't want to have any dissatisfied customers. And I was like, how many people really appreciate seeing all that information on the inside of I'm like, nobody's doing that anyways. Sometimes I shoot myself in the foot by trying to do too much. Yeah. Like I should have been just happy not having the ugly glue. But no, I had to go and put a double-sided metal sticker that cost almost as much as the plate.
You got to try.
Which, as soon as I took it away, people were like, I loved it. Like, why didn't you say you loved it when you had it? That's the thing about life stuff.
Speak up.
You love it until you don't have it. Or, you don't say you love it until it's gone. But anyways, I did away with that just because I didn't want to have any issues. But, the technology that I can put into these and the constant evolution that I can do because I don't mass produce. I don't make 100,000 of these bottles. Of course I have an MOQ to meet. Which,
always.
It's expensive to do it on the level that I do it. But I still want to have a little fluidity in there if I want to change something.
Yeah.
Which right now I'm actually working on maybe even redesigning the bottle to make it even heavier glass. And I'm like, you're
heavier.
We told you were crazy before. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? You can't ship this. It's too much. I said, look.
You can do what you want.
I can do what I want.
That's right.
And it's going to sell. Imagine having that Argos bottle double thick, double crystal, hand polished.
Double.
With a bigger plaque because now I got more real estate.
Ooh.
Imagine what I could do.
What are you going to do? Are you going to do 4-ounce bottles now?
I wouldn't even have to go over 100 ml. Huh. I wouldn't. I would just have a thicker, bigger, heavier, thicker bottle with more plaque space. I could put more details.
Wow.
I'm just thinking of all these possibilities and stuff that I shouldn't even be thinking about because I need to be focused on the fragrance. But, I'm thinking about magnetic cap. I'm thinking about if I make
those.
If I make the neck thicker, I got to make the glass thicker because I don't want it to have no neck. That's the beauty of it. It has that separation.
I do love your new neck because I have the original Triumph of Bacchus and I cannot pick that up by the cap.
And I'll tell you that they told me, the manufacturer's like, you can't do a full metal cap. And they measured it out. I was like, no, it's too bad. The glass and the cap, it's going to be too much. They said, we recommended this. We have 30 years experience. And I'm like, but I want this. Yeah, and they're like, okay, finally. So we did metal on the top and it's plastic on the neck. And it's a 2-piece system that interlocks. It's still a 2-piece system with the metal.
Interesting.
Metal neck now and metal top, full metal with an interlocking mechanism on the inside that I helped create so that it would never come apart.
Fucking A.
But when they did the plastic, you cannot within 100% of accuracy make that plastic mold, because it has cooling time and it has molding time and there's some expansion, contraction. So, it's like 99% of the time. But there's always that 1 out of 100 or 2 out of 100 or whatever.
Yeah.
That the neck's not going to fit quite as snug. And it didn't matter if I did the vertical and the horizontal catch and then I did the collar catch. Didn't matter. And that was after your bottle.
Yeah.
So I experimented with that one first. And then I said, no, we're going full metal. And then I did the ring around the collar with the ring catch. And then it was too much. We were having people like, I can't get the cap off. Oh. They're like doing this. I'm like, what are you doing? And then they're trying to twist it off. And they're grinding on that thing. And I'm just like, no. So then we went to this no collar catch, which we're at now, full metal with the vertical and horizontal, which is the best situation that I could possibly
Is
have.
this the Danier first release or no?
No, this is like the last. This is the last two: Sacred Flame and Hiron's Veil. So these are the ones. So we can open this one, and you can see. You can open that one.
All right, I'll take it out.
And this one has the no neck ring around the collar catch.
I don't know if you guys. I'll zoom in on the edit because I focus on each of us separately.
Okay. So that's Sacred
beautiful,
Flame. So that one came out in September.
Thank you for bringing. You didn't have to bring anything.
I know, but I love.
That's not why I invited you here.
Visual aids.
Here you go. You could take a look. This is the beautiful artwork. I'll zoom in on it.
That's the 100 ml.
This is gorgeous.
And good luck getting that wrap off. We even used the thickest, and I'd like to say this, and now that I've bought over 1,000 fragrances in the last, 12 months.
Yeah, this is absurd.
Yeah, we use the thickest BOP film on the market for sure. Because we want to protect that. Even that paper that we use is not like a
I might have
paper.
to cut.
It's metallic.
Cut the camera
like
off.
if you take a quarter and you scratch that off, it's shiny underneath.
Really?
Yeah, it's a metallic paper.
Dude, I love you. This is the shit that gets me up in the morning. You understand what I mean? When I get up, and I hold an item in my hand that I love and I appreciate, and I
we talk about morning wood, or we talk about fragrance here?
No morning wood here. Pause.
Hey, you haven't seen the fragrance yet.
Yeah, that's true. Oh my God, this box is different than the other boxes.
Yeah, it's a progression.
Wow. Because unfortunately, I have Triumph of Bacchus and I have Danier, but this is nuts, dude. I could just feel the quality and this is way different than the other shit, dude.
It's a progression. Yeah.
This is fucking unreal.
Yeah, we don't even use the same colors. We use the orange for the flame.
I can't wait to show
it's
everybody.
It's like a burnt orange, like a glowing ember. And that was perfect for fall because this was a September release. So we even use visual, like Bravida Delicaccia. The green abrasive. What's that?
I love that. No, I was just repeating what you said.
Bravida Delicaccia. So the thrill of the chase is a double entendre, the thrill of chasing the woman. But we used green. Baccio was the summertime oud. We used blue. For this one, we used orange. So we use a lot of color, subliminal stuff. Oh, yeah, we get psychological warfare going on.
This is, holding this in my hand, I haven't had a release since Danier.
Okay.
So holding this is way different. This is nice. From what I remember, at least. Mm-hmm. Danier came out a couple years, 2022?
I think it's 3 years.
Yeah, so it's. I haven't held that box in a while, but this box, I'm going to zoom in on this. I can't wait to show you all how beautiful this artwork is, the description, the story, and everything on the back. And this box is gorgeous. I love your shit. I really do. I love, oh my God. There's nothing like holding something that's quality in your hand. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, this is absolutely gorgeous. Look at this bottle right here. Beautiful placard, semi three-dimensional, soft enamel. I got to spray this on my hand. I haven't smelled this yet.
Which they do the enameling by hand with a needle, bake it in a kiln. The fruits.
This is perfect for this time of year right now.
If you love Bacchus, you'll love this one.
Oh, my goodness.
You got the peach. You got the tangerine. You got the cashmere in wood, a Papanax, benzoin.
This is unbelievable, dude.
Yeah, spicy, warm, ambery.
But it's what I love about your fragrances, they're blended so well.
Yeah, and that's my secret too. That's one of the things that I had to learn, and I learned it. I'm actually very fortunate that my teacher was very adamant about the pre-blending process, even blending the oils before you even put the alcohol in.
Really?
Like a pre-blend, making sure everything is in he had just a 3D sense of a nose, like blending the oils, making sure that those were blended and macerated and mature, then even adding the alcohol and not rushing anything before you even, oh my, I can smell it over here.
So good. Thank you. You didn't have to give me anything.
I love that. The sea. I never
so
get,
good.
You know what? I don't even get osnomic. I don't even go nose blind to my own stuff.
Really?
And people ask me all the time, what's your favorite? I said, I'm 2 years ahead of you. Wow. I can't tell you what my favorite is because I'm working on it still.
Oh, this is nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really. Thank you so much. You did not have to.
That's such a rich scent. Imagine if that was a drink.
It's so well blended. The problem is it's not a problem, but it's so well blended. Mm-hmm. That's the thing. It's so smooth. It's not screechy. You know, sometimes when you get spicy stuff, it could be a little like too much for you.
And that was why I never really was an incense guy, because it was too loud and it would muddle things for me. But now, you know, like I said with rose and these other things, there's levels to this. You know, you don't have to do it this certain way.
Totally.
Yeah. So I'm appreciating that a little bit more. And we may have an incensey fragrance
this
coming out.
smells great, man.
See?
This smells fucking great.
I'm surprised I can smell it as strong as I can over here.
From where you're sitting.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, it smells so good, man.
The bubbles, astronomical on that one.
On the bottle, just when you hold the bottle, it's just like, I love holding something and just saying like, there was time, there was effort, there was passion behind this, and there's quality in this. You feel like your money's well spent.
Well, how would you feel if that was just in a round bottle with a round cap and a sticker that said Sacred
I can't
Flame?
tell you how many times I'm disappointed when I buy a fragrance. I'm like, this fucking packaging blows. Smells good maybe, but it's like, if you don't have the packaging to go with it, it kind of like fades away.
And then this is one thing that I tell my employees too, is you know, you have to set the table. You have to put the mindset and the mood into somebody so that they can be prepared for what they're about to experience and appreciate it and digest it. You know,
Totally.
And that's why I tell them, that's why we do the gift wrapping, and it has to be done a certain way. Even you know, I'm so anal about all this stuff. Like we sit there and they're like, why is he in here? Why is he here again? I'm like, I'm showing you how to put it and punch all the things so that the little, you know, the little sample sprayer doesn't slide out and, you know, fall loosely into the, no, it needs to be in there, locked in there into the little sample card. So not upside down.
I love this. I'm going to wear this to work on Monday.
Be careful. I saw somebody who the first time they went crazy, they did like 17 sprays. And I'm like, are you insane?
Ooh.
And they were in their car.
Wow.
Hot
boxing.
I'm surprised they didn't choke themselves out.
So, you know, there's lots of layers of complexity to the thought of your releases, process, execution, you know, the whole nine, the packaging, the backstory, the juice itself.
We didn't even really talk about the artist series.
No, we're going. I got plans for that. It's apparent how everything is important to you. It's clearly apparent. Since all of these, I had a question. Since all of these releases coincide with each other, they go with a theme. Do you already have a grand master plan rollout, bringing all of this together at like an endpoint, like a concluding story, if you will, or do you just go with the flow?
I think about it from both ends. Like, where could this go and where should this go?
Yeah.
And where would it go on its own? I'm always working on, you know, what would happen. Like, I got a car accident this year.
Really?
And, yeah, I got a pretty bad one. I got hit by a extended cab, and I was in one of my employees' cars, in a little Honda.
Oh my God, I'm sorry.
Somebody, you know, T-boned us, and I tore my labrum, and I broke my foot. I broke 3 ribs. And I was like, what would happen to this brand if I was gone? Obviously nothing, you know, but, you know, I had to put certain things in place and start thinking about things in a different way, you know. So I tell my employees too, I say, like, when they come to me for stupid questions, I said, I'm not here. Like, they're like, what is he doing? Like, I'm not here. Like, you're right here. I said, I'm not here. Like, the goal for this year, for 2024, 2025 now, is for this thing to operate without me. So don't come to me with stupid questions, you know, that you've been trained on. And in the next 2 years, I want it to be able to grow. So I have 2 perfumers that I'm training and working with right now. And they're getting really good at understanding the DNA and my thought concept and the process of what I do. So I want this to be able to grow, you know, in the next 2-3 years without me. Now, that's just heaven forbid I can't. Now, this is something that I think I could do, you know, well into retirement.
What about up until this point? You've been the perfumer behind everything.
Everything.
So now
I'm actually, and it's a tricky thing because it's so incestuous in Gras. Like, everybody knows everybody. Everybody been with everybody. Everybody worked with this one and worked with that one. And in one way, it's good because you can't, you can't shit where you sleep, and you can't just jump ship without everybody knowing. But, you know, it's like, I need to be able to open up and have some level of trust. So I have multiple compounders. So I have 2 compounding labs that I work with. They might get 40%. They might get 60% of a formulation. Comes back to me, to my office, and then we do the blending.
Interesting.
The maceration. I don't have enough space in France to do everything myself. I would need another 13,000 square feet at least.
Wow.
And I've got 5 here and 2 there. It's not enough. And now that we're doing such a high volume of distribution, I really don't have enough space. So that's why I'm thinking about maybe next year opening up another facility in Italy.
Unreal.
And then, like I said, I want to get into my own tinctures and my own, formulation and distillation. I want to because I really want to geek out and do that.
If you do that, then you could
I'm going to release my own alcohol too.
What?
I'll do my own alcohol.
Yeah.
For sure. Why not? Infused.
But if you do all that shit, do you have plans on selling to other perfumers and fragrance houses if you're going to do your own tinctures?
Oh, I'm already doing it. I'm already selling my ingredients.
Really?
Because remember, I'm buying in bulk.
That's right.
So we sell to Guerlain.
Get the fuck out.
No. Nobody should know this, but yes.
You're a savage.
When I source, if I get a great deal, it's a finite thing. Like if you have something, it's gold. Like if you have an ingredient from a certain year, from a certain region, in that much quantity, I might actually, it's a commodity.
It's like buying Bitcoin.
No, it's better.
Oh, you're
it's
fucking.
Why wouldn't I get just enough for me? And everything has a shelf life too. That's another thing.
Yeah.
But it also adds to the value. So it's not really hard for me. There's some things that I've bought and that I've never touched and used in a formulation yet. But hypothetically, I thought about it.
Wow.
And because some of the people that I was in the group with, we went and purchased it, I was able to invest on that. That's another side that nobody even realizes.
And then you need the real estate to store said materials.
Don't need to, because I have compounders. So I have leased space within compounders. It's like having, think about this. Say you're a drug manufacturer and you need, this compounding drug manufacturer to make this ingredient and then this one. I don't need to store it or house it. They can do that and they can unload it. And they also have their own customers that need it. But I already have my tanks in their places that I've leased that they're storing materials for me for future use.
Are you guys seeing this? This is like a master class in business, perfumery, anything.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's something that you only understand if you're willing to take the risk.
You're essentially on a different level than the vast majority of other perfumers, fragrance house owners. You're basically a one-stop shop.
Well, yes, but it's very secretive. It's only for the upper echelon.
Yeah.
And I don't even have to unload it or market it or nothing. They hear about it through somebody.
Wow.
It's
word of mouth.
Yeah. It goes fast.
This is crazy.
Yeah. So if I'm not going to use something and it's not going to be in a formulation within a year, I'm selling it.
Wow. I got to be honest. I didn't expect
And if you got a rose or something or an oud, and that's why it bugs me so much. It doesn't bug me. It's just human nature.
Yeah.
People are like, well, what oud is this? Where's it from? I want to know. I buy it from you. I'm not going to tell you shit. As soon as I tell somebody, then it's going to get back and then my prices go up.
Of course. So one thing that I loved is witnessing the evolution of your brand. Starting with the more simplistic bottles with the Pour Homme and the Pour Femme and stuff like that. And then, to the Bacchus style and then into the artist series with the colorful placards and stuff. I love that shit. Mm-hmm. So when you took that jump to the artist series, what was the actual inspiration behind the bottle design itself? Because you went with the thicker glass, then you started to do the colorful placards. Because the Triumph of Bacchus, it's a three-dimensional placard.
Two-tone, yeah.
Exactly. It's a dual. You got the gold and the silver. Mm-hmm. So what was the inspiration behind that, and what made you try to jump and leap and then start to form this entire artist series that you did?
It's an onion. I love complexity. I love complex, dense fragrances. I love the story. I love anything that I can any way I can make my life more difficult. Yeah. I'm going to do it because it gives me a challenge. The cube bottles that got released in 2018 was really just a placeholder. I was trying to figure stuff out with the manufacturer. They were telling me, I can't do this, I can't do that. Everything I tried, they were like, no, you can't do it. Or you got to buy an ungodly amount just to, break the MOQ.
Yeah.
And get a mold and all that.
Gotcha.
So the cube was just a placeholder because I had a charity event and I needed to have bottles, and I bought enough of them so that I could roll that in until I could figure that whole thing out, which I did. But the artist series for me it's almost like I was getting bored before and I shouldn't have been, but it was almost a challenge too. And I love art because I was a psych minor when I was getting my health degrees in occupational therapy, and I was an art history minor too at one point. I love art history. I love art.
It's clear, yeah.
Yeah. And I was like, because I designed these plaques. I design them all out, and then we turn them in STL file, and then we bring them out, and we give it some dimension. It's all has its own problems and challenges. Yeah. But for me, it was like, okay, now I was able to do successfully. I was able to integrate Greek mythology into my love of fragrance and make a brand out of it. But how can I make this even more all-encompassing and maybe even reach out to another segment of the population that's into art, like I am? And I was like, okay, let's do an artist series. So now I'm thinking, okay, so I know, like, let's take Danae, for example, the one that you have.
Yeah, I
so
love that one.
You've got the Gustav Klimt artist series. And I was thinking, okay, well, if we do that, we have to do it in a style of Gustav. That's why the box artwork is like a Gustav Klimt painting. And then you've got Danae on the front. And that was the first time I decided to put the color. And I wanted to kind of celebrate the artist series by adding the color. Like I was adding another dimension.
Which you did.
Which I did. There's another dimension within another dimension within another dimension. And let me explain why. Because not only do you have the fragrance, which is my interpretation of the mythology, you have the Greek mythology, which is the story and the lineage and the legend and the lore. And now you've got an artist in history who's decided to take the time and the effort and the know-how and the whatever to create this artwork. So for Danae, that painting, you've got Gustav, but not many people realize that many artists have done a rendition of that same painting. Even Rembrandt.
Really?
Yeah. And they all did it for different reasons. And it would depend a lot on the era in Christianity and where things were. So, like when Rembrandt did it, just for example, it was he had a Danae in a bed, and then you had these gold coins coming down, okay? It wasn't just the gold drops, like the golden rain, the golden shower of Zeus. Yeah, we could get there. We can go there if we want.
I'm ready.
And that's another thing that I like about this. I could be risque and I could be cross if I want without having to say it. I don't have to be belligerent. Precisely. I don't have to swear or curse. Yeah. I don't have to be over-sexualized.
Yeah.
There's ways of doing things that will pique the imagination and the interest of somebody tastefully, without having to say a word. And that's another thing with the brand is I want to say enough without having to say anything at all. So with Rembrandt, going back to that example, he's got the maiden of Danae, and she's reaching up trying to steal those coins that are coming down. And in that time, it was a Christian movement, and he was painting that where, Danae was bare, her chest was bare, and you've got this golden rays coming down with coins, and those coins were to symbolize the relationship that Danae was having with God, like an open, honest, like bare it all relationship with God and Christianity, and I'm opening up. And then you've got humanity stealing those coins and monetizing it, which was symbolization of the church monetizing Christianity. So there's and nobody even has to know this. But if they really want to geek out and they really want to understand, Titan, whatever, he's done a rendition. There's so many painters that have actually taken this Danae concept theme and done their own rendition for a different reason. And you can go down that rabbit hole for endless amounts of your time.
Wow.
And really get philosophical about that whole theme. And for me, that was like, wow, this is the pinnacle of what I want to do with this art house, which is what it is. Now you've got all your senses. Now you've got your third eye, involved, because now your mind is really engaged. If you really want to, you can be simplistic as you want. This just smells great. Yeah. But if you really want something that's going to hit you on all cylinders, just think about the story. There's a little bit of that in the website. You can go on there. You can go down that rabbit hole if you want. And you can discover and just get a little inkling of what's going on behind, my mind.
Yeah. One thing that I want to talk about is you kind of touched on it briefly earlier. And I kind of want to nerd out on it.
Go ahead.
Because one might not realize how much is involved in the bottle itself. And I would say the atomizer is one of, if not the most important part to a fragrance bottle, is the fucking atomizer. There's various types of, disbursement of the liquid, the type of spray, etc. And you were making my hair stand up before because you were talking about the different various crimps and all this and that. So if we may, I'd love to dive into that because that stuff really intrigues me because the atomizer I judge a lot on a bottle when I spray it.
Well, let me counter your nerd and one-up it. Because I took it upon myself to get full, I went full nerd on this one myself. Not only to the crimp points, like 32 crimp points. Like, what is that? Like, I've seen it all. I bought manual ones. I bought pneumatic ones. I bought electronic ones just to see which one is the best crimp. And when you get into the pneumatic, you got to work on the PSI and how much pressure. You get too much, you explode the bottle, which I've done. And you get not enough and you get a loose crimp. You get not enough contact points and it will move and you'll lose the pressurization. It's an art form in itself. Yeah. And the fennel, which is the length between not on the collar of the cap, but actually the collar that goes over the sprayer atomizer.
Yeah.
That, conceals the crimp. You got that collar that comes down. You've actually got a fennel, which is what it's called, that space before it's crimped. So this is the length of the fennel before it's actually crimped.
Oh,
you have to make sure that length is good because if it's too short, your crimp is too tight.
And then what would that do? If it was too tight, if the crimp was too tight, what would it do?
It explodes the bottle.
Oh.
More often than not, the crimp is too long, and then you get a curling effect. It'll crimp, and then it'll mushroom out. So I spent many hours figuring out the perfect length of a crimp and how many points of contact that you actually needed to have a secure crimp that wouldn't move.
To your taste, obviously.
Yeah, and then, I even went so far as to test the different ball bearings, stainless steel, surgical steel, what grade of metal, and then how does metal interact with liquid and alcohol and all these organic materials, which it does. So then I just decided to get rid of it and do glass because that won't interact and it won't change. Because, some of these fragrances, especially from the 90s, if you go back, there'll be a metallic tinge to it. And that's the chemicals of that fragrance interacting with that ball bearing.
Oh, interesting.
So it'll change, and it might even give a little discoloration around there.
Really?
Around the collar, and even the juice itself will change because of that interaction, that chemical reaction with that metal. So it's a whole science behind all that. And that's just that. And then I went into the pressurization of it in the crystal dip tube that I mentioned. And even the quantity of what is actually dispersed and the molecule size. I mean, you can get down to that too, which I think I've gotten to the point where I'm happy and satisfied with the dispersion, the microatomization, the quantity, because you'll actually save the fragrance. That was actually a saving tool. And honestly, you'll actually get to the middle and the base a lot sooner with a microatomization versus a thicker blot of the juice. When you get those thicker streams on some of those fragrances, you'll still get the top and the base, and the middle and the base, and the heart and the base. But with mine, with that microatomization, you're going to get a fuller experience of what that fragrance is intended to be without having to wait for those things to actually dry down.
So what you're actually saying is to the listeners that, because I have various different types of viewers and listeners that probably don't even have knowledge.
Like I said, you want to nerd out on this, I'll go there.
I would love to. But the way the liquid disperses out of the nozzle, if you will, dictates a lot of the notes you receive and when you receive them.
It can. The
size, which complicates things.
Yeah, the size of the droplet, too, makes a difference. And the longevity of how long that bottle lasts you. If you're getting a thicker stream, you're going to go through it a lot faster.
Yes.
You have a smaller droplet, you're actually going to get to the heart and the base in a more encompassing experience than that thicker liquid stream.
Yeah. But then, so you would also perceive notes differently.
Yes.
But then the way it, how would I put it? The type of area it would cover would also be different.
Absolutely. You're going to get a wider coverage. Now, the only thing you have to be conscious of is if there's like a fan or, like a ventilation system above you and you're spraying one of those fine mist and it's getting carried away. And it also depends on how far away from your body that you're holding it. If you've got a finer mist, you don't want to be way back here.
Oh.
Because then your coverage, you
want to be close.
Yes, you want to be closer. And for me, that made more sense because you want to be like pinpoint accurate. I want it here. Yeah. Or I want it here. I don't want to just spray a splotch. And it kills me when I see people mashing their stuff together and rubbing it all over. It's not a roller ball.
Yes. That's what's interesting to me is how it's dispersed out and how different houses have different, like, I have Dior Homme Parfum, which is one of my favorite fragrances of all time. I think Francois Dimarchi is like a fucking god. And when you spray that motherfucker, like I have the original formulation, it comes out like a jet of water. Really? It's like a fucking, it's not fine in the slightest, which I like to a degree, but your stuff, it disperses as a more, like you said, like a more fine mist.
It's calculated.
Yes. It's a more fine mist. One atomizer that I like a lot is Jacques Cavalier. All the stuff he does for Louis Vuitton. Mm-hmm. I like a lot of his stuff.
I have not tried any of the Louis Vuitton.
Before you leave, if you want, I could make a round, give you a couple spritz before we leave. I think you'd appreciate some of his stuff.
I think I'll go buy. I'll go buy some, because I'm on a spree right now. Like the gloves are off. I can go buy stuff now, and it's like the old apothecary style bottle, which I could see that as soon as I saw that. And then I was, okay, how do they put it, the atomizer inside the bottle? And I was like, okay, we'll wait till you're ready in 2024, 2025, and you can start buying stuff again.
Yeah.
And now I'll probably just go buy the whole line.
You might as well. I mean, to me, I personally enjoy, for my style of spraying, his atomizer. I like yours as well, but I know how to operate yours. Mm-hmm. You just have to know how to operate certain atomizers. Yeah. And yours, I know. It's great. The beautiful mist. I just have to hold it closer.
Mine is a slower one.
Yeah.
It's not smash that thing down.
If you hit his, you're dispersing a lot of juice.
You finger bang mine, it's you're gonna get soaked.
Yeah. Who's doing the box art for you?
Because I do everything.
What?
Simple. Yes, I love it. So the artist series, for example, I will take an artist's rendition that is basically translated into the fragrance that I've created. But I will make it so that the art wraps. That's the challenge, really, is to take a square painting and create the whole story, the whole scenery.
Yeah.
Now, I will say I am using AI for the first time, not on this one, not on any of them that's been released, but on one that's going to be released in February. I've got 2 releases coming up. Neptune's Trident, which will be my first freshie.
Really?
Because I love heavy, dense. You know that. You know that.
Yes.
But this is going to be different. This is going to be in the Argos style, freshie. This is going to be the most dense, fresh fragrance with eternal.
I need that.
This will last eternal, and it won't have that cheap cologne smell after you take a shower and you're like, oh, it's still there, but it ain't good. Now, this is going to be eternal.
Oh, I need that.
And it's Neptune's Trident. So we're switching between Greek and Roman, but I love, and I almost thought about doing this too, is doing a whole zodiac, like all the planets, Jupiter, Venus, Neptune.
If you did that, my son is a fucking nerd with the planets.
I'm a nerd with the planets too.
That would resonate with me a lot. If you do that, let me know. I'll get everything.
Well, one of my new travel atomizers actually has the Greek zodiac on it. So we have, and what was cool about making this artwork, which I did too, was that I was able to put a little Easter eggs, of future fragrances to come, and some of the fragrances that I've already released, like Fall of Phaetons on here, which, if people don't really know, that's an apocalyptic story, Fall of Phaeton. So that's the whole story with Solon and Egypt, and that's where you'll get the Eye of Ra, and people don't understand that whole relationship. Rome actually ruled over Egypt for a great period of time, and there's a lot of overlap between some of the Greek
and a nice atomizer.
And the Egyptian pantheon. Oh yeah, this is magnetic. Yeah, and then this is magnetic, and then this is refillable.
Oh, they're gorgeous. I
this
saw
is-
them recently. Trust
This
me.
is
I have
Charon's Vale, Chiron's Vale, however you want to say
Oh,
it.
I
Just
need
don't
it.
say Sharon's Vale.
Sharon.
There ain't no Sharon.
Hi, Sharon.
They ain't from the 50s, okay? This ain't no.
Hi, Sharon. Hi, Sharon.
All right, well, I'm sharing with you. Okay,
Yeah,
so here,
you're
take
sharing
this.
with me.
This is Chiron's Vale.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
All right, that's what I say about my son.
I love this.
So that's refillable.
Look at this.
It's got
Beautiful.
Chiron's Vale,
Oh, this is gorgeous.
refillable, and we
smell this.
even sell the inner cartridge, so you don't have to cross pollinate your fragrance. Oh, rose oud.
Yeah, I was going to say, this has rose, heavy
yes,
rose.
Yes, but it transitions. So like 30, 40 minutes down, you're going to start getting that patchouli and the earthiness.
Oh, the magnet made me orgasm.
Yeah, that
The
click,
magnet made me orgasm.
the click,
Pause.
the click. It's the little things that mean so much.
You know, rose is something that took me a while to really gain a love for.
Have you tried Adonis Awakeness? Oh, Adonis
No, I've been
Awakens.
dying for it. I've been watching
Palisade-
reviews
I have
on
I
it.
have a sample pack.
Oh, you're a gentleman and a scholar.
Yes, I am. So at your own leisure, you know, take your time, have a nice little Merlot,
I'm gonna do it tonight
or do a Malbec, something
with the
a little
wife.
heavier.
We're gonna wet each other.
Hey, I thought you had your tube tied. I thought you were one and done.
No,
Read the disclaimer on the back, okay?
I'm one and
I
done.
cannot be responsible.
I'm one and done.
I can't be
but
responsible, okay?
if the Argos is involved, we might have a splash.
Hey, that's all it takes. That's all it takes is a splash.
Oh man. So let me ask you this, because Triumph of Bacchus is not only how I found out about you,
It's a gateway drug.
but it's about, like you said, the gateway drug. It's how many people found out
Yes.
about you. Do you have any inkling that fragrance was going to blow up before it actually did?
Nope, because that was the one that it was the most, like I said, that one person said that they absolutely hated it. And that one took me 3 years and I had to forget about it to appreciate it, really. And that was, a lot of it was because of the maturity and the journey that I was on
Yeah.
with just every day buying these fragrance ingredients and getting my nose and just understanding these as singular, scents, and then putting it all together and appreciating one of the earlier renditions that I had. Because the thing with that really was the maceration and the maturation. And you got to be careful. When I'm in France, those French, they butcher that maceration.
I have questions
They
regarding
get that
this.
tea in there and it takes it in a whole different way.
Really?
Masturbation. It's maceration, maturation. You got to say it correctly. Can't tell you how many of my French friends butcher that. And I just, that's how I do. I'm like, nah, maceration.
Maceration.
Yes, you got to macerate.
You got to do it.
You got to do it right.
soak it.
If you do not macerate correctly, bad things will happen. So, no, that was my introduction, and it taught me so much about how you blend the oils and let them take their time to interact with each other. I was rushing things. I was smelling things, testing things, smelling things, testing things constantly. And I was like, whoa, I have to let it sit a few days. Even when I get samples back from the compounding lab, they're like, what are your thoughts? I'm like, who are you talking to? Like, I'm going to let that sit, even the temperature. Like if it's coming from a cold climate, if you're shipping it to me in the winter,
Yeah.
and I'm testing samples out from a compounder, I'm like, I'm going to let it sit for a couple of days. It's got to get back to room temperature. I need to
Really?
be in the right frame of mind. I got to, seriously, like I can't be stressed out.
Wow.
Because you can psych yourself out and have pre-notions before you even smell something.
Wow.
And I could be taken down in a wrong path so easily. And really, that's what Triumph of Bacchus taught me. And that's why I call it Triumph of Bacchus, because it's not Triumph of Bacchus, which is, the rum and the booze, the party. Yeah,
Oh,
it is.
delicious.
It is, which fits the story. But it's really my triumph, because it was really the breaking point for me into the process that is now in place, the time, the maturation, the maceration, the pre-blending, the blending after the alcohol is introduced, the tanks that I have. I bought my own tanks.
Yeah.
And they take their time. We don't, 90% of all the other fragrance houses out there, when they make something, it's made on a machine. They got a formula. They call it Bertha. It has some name in some compounding place. They shoot the formula over there. They fill it within a day or two. I don't do that. I compound here, 40%. I compound there, 60%. It comes back to my place. It takes even more time. And it's like a fine wine. And it comes together and it melds. It's not even the same color by the time I put it in the bottle. Like, it's funny when, people say, oh, I got a Triumph of Bacchus. Can you send me a macerated mature bottle? Like, they've been listening to me.
People really ask you that?
It's like, no, it's already pre-macerated, pre-blended. It's not like we just did this in a day. This is all months in the making. Even though I've already got the fragrance ready and I'm producing it, I still have to take the time to pre-blend the oil. And then when the alcohol is introduced, there's another waiting period. So it's not like I need to, send you a macerated mature bottle.
Yeah.
The color will get darker. There's certain materials like saffron, sandalwood, vanilla. There's certain ingredients that are just naturally going to get darker. And they're like, oh, well, don't you put coloring in that? I said, no, I don't. Because then I got to reformulate and I have to adjust to calculate, because everything has to go through IFRA. And I can't just put coloring in there because it might change the formulation in a certain way.
To the listeners, what is IFRA to the listeners?
So that's like the European body that kind of regulates. So when you see the ingredients on the back of a box, that's not the full list of ingredients. Don't be fooled by that. You might see 20, you might see 5, you might see 30.
Yeah.
That's not the full thing. There's like 90, 95% of there that says perfume compound or perfume whatever. And that's our proprietary blend. But there's certain things that may be considered an allergen that they need to regulate.
Interesting.
So, like oak moss, or there's like, there's certain things. You can only put it in a formulation in a certain amount. And those need to go on the back of the box, individually listed.
That's fucking interesting.
So, don't think that, I know the ingredients and they've reformulated because the ingredient list has changed. No, that's just the possible allergens that IFRA says that we have to list on the back of the box. Oh. You still got 90% of the formulation at least that's probably proprietary that they're not going to list on there because it's not, not considered an allergen that needs to be regulated. And people are going to be bitching about me
That's so
saying
interesting.
That. Yeah.
There's so much to the game that the average
person has no idea. And if you don't do what I do and actually do it and do your homework, and you would know.
Yeah.
And then you just have to be taken advantage of and, learn the hard way.
Let me ask you this. There's a big misconception regarding maceration, right?
Yes, you said it correctly.
And this kind of cross plays into dupe houses and things of that nature. So first, I guess what I'll ask you is, what is your general time frame or period that you typically macerate your fragrances before release? Now, I know every house has to be different, right?
Mm-hmm. I have no idea what other houses do, honestly. I don't even question. Like I said, the last 5 years, I've really had the blinders on.
Yes.
Focused on my own because it's so fascinating, what I do and how I've learned. So I can't speak to other houses, but for me, and I can't give you it's exactly 7 days or it's exactly 15 days. There's certain ingredients now that I know take time.
Yeah.
But for me, at this point, I have time because I have more formulations. I have more fragrances that are, pretty close to being ready.
Yeah.
I don't rush anything anymore. I don't feel the need like I need to. So even when I'm doing samples back and forth from compounds, like I said, I let them sit there, get to room temperature. I have to be in the right frame of mind. I can't come in and be dealing with 17 different things and then just be pissed off and then I'm going to smell this. It's not how it works. So if I want to be more specific and answer your question, like for Triumph of Bacchus, I'll just give you that as an example for that particular one with those ingredients. So for the oils, we pre-blend the oils together, like the saffron, the sandalwood, the apple, the peach, all that stuff gets pre-blended. And that's like almost a month of the oils just melding together.
Okay.
And we don't, there's some mixing and stuff involved, but we don't force it. We don't add heat. We don't try to speed up that process. And then when the alcohol is introduced, I think that's another thing that's missed. The alcohol, the grade that we use, it's not some cheap Avion. It's not some cheap perfumer's apprentice, you can only get 5 gallons a year type of shit. This is some hard to stuff, it's hard to get. It's in France, and I'll never tell anybody where I get it from.
As you shouldn't.
Nope. But it's a different grade of alcohol, and I'll tell you, that even makes a difference, the alcohol.
Yeah.
The expolient, the stuff that actually disperses it makes a difference. Because it can actually tinge it. It could give it on the out layer, it'll give it a metallic quality, or it'll give it a fermented quality. Not everybody picks that up. But to me, it's like aftertaste.
Yeah.
And I don't want to leave a bad taste in anybody's palate. So it's expensive, and it's a very old manufacturer that does it specifically for high level champagnes and vodkas and for perfume.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah, the maceration process is a big topic among the fragrance community.
I'm surprised it's a big topic. I'm glad it is.
Yeah.
That just means they're getting deeper into the rabbit hole.
It is, because I'll tell you why. Because people will receive a fragrance, right? I'll give you an example. I go to the mall. Let's say I go to Macy's or Neiman Marcus or Saks Fifth Avenue, and I spray something. I smell it. It smells gorgeous, whatever. Then I go home, I buy a brand new bottle of it, and then I spray it, and it doesn't smell the same.
Let me tell you something real quick. When you get the smaller samples at the stores, the boutiques, or even if you buy my sample pack, the maturation process is going to be expedited because it's in a smaller quantity.
Thank you.
People don't understand things on a molecular level, at a smaller level. If you have a larger mass, it's going to be in a smaller motion.
Yes.
You have to really be a scientist. It's an easy concept.
No, it's the truth.
Yes. If you have a smaller batch, a smaller sample, a 2 ml, it's going to go through what the other larger quantity, the 100 ml, the 30 ml, the 50 ml, whatever the bottle is, it's going to go through that faster.
Quicker, way quicker.
And not only that, you're coming from the same batch, okay? Say you're filling the samples, you're filling the bottles, all from the same batch, okay? You've got air going into it, okay? So the air will speed it up. So somebody says, okay, you know what? I got this. It's not the color. It is, but it's not. And I want to mature. What do? Spray it. Just give it a spritz.
Let the oxygen.
Yeah, just get it started.
You need to get the oxygen in the bottle.
Introduce it. Like I said, like the air's in there, and then let it go clear after that first spray. Give it a spray, put it in there, treat it right. Don't put it in the bathroom where you got variant temperatures, humidity. Don't put it in the windowsill where you got UV rays, unless you got UV blocking, glass. Put it back in the box, whatever. People buy backup bottles now of Argos. I got a guy that's got 3 bottles of Argos because he wants to use one. He wants one to be matured in the next year, and then he's got one that he wants from 5 years from now.
It makes sense.
And I'm like, yes, that's my guy.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you. And I'll tell you how this go.
Precisely.
I know certain things that will happen because I know the ingredients and I know what kind of to expect. But it also depends on how they're going to treat it too, right? And where they're going to put it, how they're going to store it, how they're going to care for it, and how often they use it. But when you get a sample, it's expedited. So you're going to get a fuller, richer fragrance. And then when you get that bottle, it might be pungent, it might be sour, it might be too fresh, not full-bodied. You're not going to get the full after effects, the full nuances, because it's fresh. It has never been sprayed before. So with that in mind, when you get a new bottle, and if that's your experience, don't freak out unless you're worried about you bought it on the gray market or something.
It's patience.
If you bought it on the gray market, then freak out by all means. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Yeah.
But if you got it in the right spot, just give it some time. Put it back in the box, put it back on the shelf, come back 3 months later.
And I've learned that the hard way. But that's the thing is it depends on the house. It depends on who released it because they have different maceration processes. Mm-hmm. And it's a very tricky game because some houses might macerate for 7 months where some might macerate for 2. Mm-hmm. But that'll dictate how it's going to smell on you, especially when you're spraying it as a tester in the Neiman Marcus, in this place. It's going to smell like, for instance, I told you I'm a big Louis Vuitton fan. I like Jacques Cavalier's stuff. So when I sprayed his Ombre Nomade in a sampler, the raspberry comes out much more I know, because Bacio
Bacio Immortale
has that beautiful
and
raspberry.
Love Triumphs Over War, raspberry. Birth of Venus, raspberry.
I need those. I need them.
Raspberry.
I need
It's
them.
one of my top 5 notes, probably.
I need them.
And there's tart raspberry, there's sweet raspberry, there's photorealistic raspberry. There's like
I need them on my shelf.
There's ketones. There's so many different raspberries that
I need them on my shelf so I can wake up in the morning and go Здравствуйте.
That's good shit.
That's why I need them.
Yes.
But there's those fragrances, and then when I spray them in the sample, they're way stronger, way different than the actual bottle that I have sitting there.
That's the long and short reason. It's the maceration process, and it's a smaller amount, which is going to accelerate that, because when they filled that sample vial, it went through, it probably came from the same vat. They probably put it in a smaller one. And then they had the tube that had air in that. And then when it got in the tube, there was air in that. And then when the crimper came down on that, there was air in that. And it's a smaller sample size, so it's going to accelerate that.
But that's a big problem, because every house has a different waiting period.
And mine, you can, once you get into a house, hopefully, I don't know, with every other house, but at least with mine, you can kind of expect certain things. Like usually the TOB is 2 years.
Wow.
2 to 3.
Makes sense.
To really get to the full body experience. It's going to, from that first spray of TOB, it's going to get darker year 1, get darker year 2. Year 3, maybe a little bit more, but it's probably going to hit a certain point. It's like, when people ask me, well, why don't you make everything an extrait? Make an EDP, make an EDT, make an EDP, or extrait de parfum. And I'm like, that's not how it works. There's certain fragrances that don't carry. You could throw 70% oil in it. It's not going to do a damn thing. Like with the TOB extrait, that was a very calculated move. I tried to do it with the Bacio. I couldn't, it wouldn't change a thing from 30% to 40% to 60%. It doesn't change a thing. It's the formulation.
Yeah.
And even if I change that particular scent, it's not going to be more strong. It doesn't make sense. Now, TOB made sense because of the fruits, the saffron, the patchouli, just the way it kind of melded together in a boozy combination. It brought out nuances that that existed, but not on that level. So you might get the tobacco. You might get the apple peach combo in unison. It might give you a more boozy, more gourmand experience, or it might even give you the more tobacco experience with the higher alcohol concentrate. And another fallacy is it's going to just, you're going to smell it across the room. It's going to be, nuclear. That's not the case. You're going to smell it on the pillow. You're going to smell it on your lapel. You're going to smell it, for days.
Yeah.
But it's closer. It's a more intimate experience with an extrait. Whereas you got more exfoliant, you got more of that disbursement with the alcohol, you're going to get a farther reach with an EDP. So, know what you're getting when you buy it.
So since you brought that up, I have a couple of questions regarding that. So you got fragrances, and obviously there's the eau de toilette or eau de cologne, eau de parfum, extrait de parfum. There's all these different flankers, if you will, of fragrances. Now, obviously what that technically dictates is the amount of oil concentration in each, right?
Mm-hmm. That's a simple term.
Yeah, simple term. So from my observation, although technically the higher oil concentration the fragrance has, the longer it will technically last on the skin, but the projection at times tends to fall short the higher the oil concentration. Now, sometimes you have a situation, let's say Baccarat Rouge 540, the extrait de parfum projects like a monster. And some instances, it doesn't. So with all these chemicals, with all these formulas, right? Which is it that contributes to the projection rather than the longevity? Is it the alcohol? Is it something else? Is it specific molecules or material? What is it that that contributes to the projection rather than the longevity?
Now, it's not a simple answer.
I assume that.
So the simple answer would be more alcohol, more exfoliant, the longer the reach.
Roger.
The greater the sillage.
Yes.
That's the simple. But then you got compounds like ISO-E, Amber Max, Ambroxan. You've got these other ones that they're projectors. And then you've got bases in there that are projectors, and you can put those in there to increase the longevity, increase the expulsion, the sillage, if you will. But for me, I still got to follow the rules. If I'm going to do an extrait versus an EDP, I still have to send that formulation in to IFRA, and it still has to be approved because there's certain compounds and things, ingredients that have to be regulated. You cannot just increase the oil concentration.
Okay.
So it's not simple in just reducing the alcohol, increasing the oil. It's not always that simple.
Oh, interesting.
But yeah, you could certainly use cheater ingredients like ambroxan, which I always thought was and that's why I was not a big proponent of using ambroxan and ISO-E and Amber Max and some of these things that were just big projecting bases and mids and exponents and things like that. So, but I'm opening up to it a little bit because of some of my heavier, denser concentrations need a little lift. Not so much to add to the composition and to the overall feel, but to actually project a little bit more for a heavier composition. And that's the subtle nuances of some of these fragrances. I've got some beast fragrances that I've made that have just blown my head off with the initial projection and the initial blast, and then they just drop. And it just kills me. It's like, why? Why can't I just extend this fragrance out for like 6 hours?
Wow.
5 hours. And it's not just a simple, I'm going to throw ambroxan in there. It doesn't work that way. Or Amber Max or, ISO-E or some of these things. It's not that easy. It has to still blend, macerate, and flow with the fragrance.
Yeah.
Because otherwise you're just taking it in another different direction, at least for me. And that's where that's the one Achilles heel for me is I have a story. And if I put something in there to do something or fix something, it messes with the story.
Yeah, interesting.
It could take that formulation that really did transition that life to death experience from the rose to the wilting rose to into the ground and to the dust. It really can change that whole formulation into something else just because I wanted it to be a projector.
So crazy.
It is crazy, and it's the most frustrating thing for me.
Yeah.
Because I have so many of these things that I've started, and then they've been amazing. And that's one of the things with an Argos fragrance that I think a lot of people appreciate is it's not something that you have. And this was a psychological thing that I wanted from the beginning too when I was making these formulations. I didn't like that I had to go to a store, and for me, time is money. And if you're going to go to a store, a salesperson is going to throw 20, and they're going to throw as many fragrances in front of you as you possibly can. So you really got 5 seconds.
Wow.
You have 5 seconds to capture the imagination, the nose of somebody before they're on to the next. And they've got another tester thrown in front of them.
So that's that opening.
You have to have a beautiful opening. You can't not just settle for a beautiful base or a lovely heart. You have to have an amazing opening. Otherwise, you never get a chance. So I really focus a lot of my compositions on telling at least a good portion of the story and hook. It's like any marketing campaign or movie or something like that. It's all about making them want to stay in that movie theater, making them want to watch that ad for 30 seconds, making them want to smell that fragrance and not go to the next one that they're going to get showed. And so I really focus a lot on that. The bases for me, you'll find are quite similar. Not that they smell the similar, but the notes when you read it are similar. I got the sandalwood in there, and the vanilla or the cacao or whatever it is,
or the tonka bean.
The tonka bean, right? I love certain bases because they smooth things out, but it's really the top and the middle, the heart, that really kind of tell the story. You might get the finale, but you'll never get to that finale if you don't hook them. And that's the hard part.
It complicates things.
It does complicate things because you want that to not die. You want to just make that to be ethereal. You want that to last. But, it's not easy because you have to have transitions too. I don't like linear fragrances.
Yeah.
So then you're just adding another level of complexity in there because if you're telling a story like a transition from life to death, it can't be bright. It can't be champagne and bubbles. You have to have some earth. You have to have some dirt.
Yeah.
You have to have some petrichor, some rock smells, you have to have some earthy notes in there to really ground that fragrance for that particular scent.
Of course.
You know, and then like for Danae, it was,
I love that one.
it was, I mean, that's a sexy story.
Sex.
It's a golden shower of Zeus.
Yeah.
It's how Perseus was formed, you know, and that's the precursor for another fragrance that I'm going to create. So it's like I'm thinking about something else on the way to that.
You're always thinking ahead. That's the thing about you that I admire the most is it's not even that you have a grand plan, but you're always looking forward. And I just interviewed a guy recently who's an Army veteran who trains canine dogs, and that's like he's a sheriff he's a cop, the whole nine. But one of his main mottos is always forward.
Yeah.
And, you know, the fact that I released his episode recently and
I
yours,
saw part of that.
forward.
He's a friend of yours, right?
Oh, you did? Yeah, Justin, yeah.
I had to do a little background.
That's my guy.
But, you know, and one thing that I took away from that is, you know, he wasn't afraid to just keep moving forward.
Always forward.
It's like, this might lead into this, and I might get excited about then like the canine thing. And then he started as a paramedic or something. And
He's the best.
So it's like, that's kind of how I am. It's like, you know, I'm interested in this, so I go down that road, and then it opens up to this. It's like an ad lib story, if then or that, you know. But you gotta. The main thing when I talk to people that are, you know, interested in what I do or things or business in general, just get started. Just get started. Things will snowball. Things will gel. Things will meld into place. If you don't, and this is where I can get stuck too, is if you overanalyze things. I can't do it. It's too much money. It's going to be too much time. Well, you make time. You mix it in there. Yeah, I didn't quit my day job. I didn't sell all my real estate and go all in on fragrance.
Yeah.
You know, you have to dedicate a certain amount of your energy and your life to something to be good at it at any level.
Agreed.
No matter what it is.
Agreed.
But it's that, you know, it's that fear of failing. It's that fear of going down the wrong path for too long and I could have done something else. It's just like investors. I should have invested in that. And then when they do, it's too late. Everybody's selling. Just get started. No matter what it is. The worst case scenario, you're going to learn some shit.
That's how I am with this, especially. I don't make money off this. I enjoy it.
But you might one day.
Oh, I hope so.
Yeah, and I might be one of the top 5, you know.
I hope so.
You know, they go back to the anal. You know,
yeah. That's all that matters is that it was done from passion and love. That's all that matters. Whether you gain monetary value or not.
That has to be the beginning. You know, it's the beginning of any relationship. If you think about it, with love, with anybody, it has to be passion. Otherwise, it never was going to be anything to begin with.
And that's why I wanted to record a podcast with you so much, because I've watched a couple of your interviews and they were great. They were fine. They were very fragrance centric, which obviously this is too, but they didn't tap into the avenues that I was curious about. So I'm very fortunate. Thank you for coming here. Mm-hmm. I got to learn so much today and, you know, about exactly what I wanted to know. And I think that everybody else that will listen to this will agree, you know, that'll hear things that they didn't normally would expect from you.
I think you're going to find in your interviews with other people, you know, in various different industries, is when you find somebody that's passionate about what they do, you know, and you say the right things, they'll open up like a book.
Oh, of course.
Because I could talk about this all day.
I know. We're still going to go a little bit more. Just a little bit. You know, I want to go back to just briefly a few more technical perfumer questions to get a perspective on something that's been eating me for some time. And we kind of briefly touched on it before tonight. So you got your different flankers, if you will. You got your eau de cologne, eau de toilette, eau de parfum, extrait de parfum, and then you got this elixir shit. Yeah. There's all this sorts of stuff.
Right.
And I think there's a large misconception, not only with the terminology, but about how much actual oil percentage is present in each concentration. Now, anybody could Google oil concentrations in perfume, and they might say 20% in eau de parfum and 10% in eau de toilette, you know, all this stuff. How much of that is really fucking bullshit?
I tell you, this is one of the sticking points that I've always had whenever I go back to France and Grasse and I'm talking with people, and it would blow people's mind to know it's not an exact number. Like, you can't say 12%, that's this. 18%, that's that. It's a range, which I'm like, my analytical mind, my over-analytical anal mind is like, why? Why can't this just say it? This is extrait. It's 35%. Obviously, it's extrait de parfum, or you can call it extrait. Or 18%. It's a range. So typically, you got to say typically, 4 to 8 EDT. And then you're getting over 8 to 10 to 12. Then you're starting to get into the EDP range up into the 18 to 20s.
Okay.
So it's like, who did this? Like, why can't they just give us a number? It's not exact. Like, you can't say 18% is this. Like, some of my compositions, like Danae, could be considered an extrait for another house. But for me, it's an EDP. Now, when I hit the 30s, obviously, there's no question. When I hit the 35, when I hit 40 for the extrait for the TOB, that's obviously extrait. But it's not, an exact number. It's kind of a little bit of a range, which really people don't understand and they don't digest that.
Yeah, it's a big misconception.
Yeah. And there's nobody that's like regulating that says this is exactly 18%, that's EDP.
Yeah.
8% EDT. It's a range. It's a little bit, and it has to depend on obviously the alcohol content, but it's a little bit of the formulation too.
Yeah.
You can have some weak extraits. What am I going to call that?
Yeah, it's true.
It's a little bit of a finesse thing.
Yeah.
Je ne sais quoi. It's a little bit of a thing.
Yeah.
That you have to know when you're in the industry, which sucks as a consumer because you're trying to understand this stuff because you assume that extrait means more money because I'm getting more oil. Yes and no. It doesn't always translate into more longevity or more projection because we talked about that.
Yep.
It's a formulation. You have to look at each fragrance as its own entity.
Yeah.
And each brand, each fragrance house, that's how you gauge. Like, you can gauge within my house of what an EDT, an EDP, and an EDP, extrait de parfum, or extrait, it's the same thing, extrait de parfum or extrait or EDP eau de parfum. I don't make EDTs. So, you can gauge within a house, I would assume. I haven't smelled a lot of houses, so I'm not sure, but I would think that certain brands have a DNA. I would like to think they would.
They do. Yeah, it's tough to really gauge because some extrait de parfums, like, they project bananas and others don't.
If you're talking about Baccarat Rouge with Kurchan, there's a lot of synthetics. There's a lot of, some of those compounds that I talked about.
A lot of synthetics.
Really, and I don't have a problem with synthetics as a whole for the market. I'm just getting into more synthetics. And a lot of it is industry driven. Like, I don't have a choice. If Femmerniche and Simrise come together and they say, hey, we don't like this natural ingredient, or it's on a list that's endangered, or who knows what the politics are. And they come up with this new synthetic that they really want to promote, and they say, IFRA, this is the new replacement for this one. Make it harder for these people, ban it, do whatever, and then all of a sudden now I have to get this.
You have no choice.
I have no choice.
Wow.
So there's a lot of politics behind some of the ingredients that we use as well.
It's crazy, man. It's a fucking, it's a tangled web.
Yeah. And, me saying that I want to get into the tinctures and, doing my own distillation, that might lead into some more problems for me that I'll have to navigate too, because then who controls that?
Yeah.
And I send my formulation up and they say, where did you get this from? Well, I made it in-house. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah.
My pre-compounds, my pre-blends, my rosalins, my mixes of sandalwood and oud mixed into one. What is that? It's just some gray areas, some uncharted territory ahead for me too.
Oh.
I have my wants, and then we'll see how that works out for me. It's going to be a headache for sure, but if I'm interested and I want to do it, I'll have to figure it out.
Yeah, it's such all that stuff, especially regarding like oil concentrations and things like that. It's a very tangled web because let me give you an example. Francois Demachy, the Sauvage creator. He did Sauvage EDT, EDP.
You got a lot of them.
Parfum, Elixir.
I haven't smelled a single one.
No?
I'm probably the only person on the planet that's never smelled a Sauvage.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. You're not missing much. They're very mass appealing, but obviously the EDT projects the most, doesn't last as long, and then so on and so forth. And as you go down the line, lasts longer, doesn't project as much, which is such a fine line between chemistry and oil concentration and this and that. And then you got the Elixir, which is totally different from everything from the entire line. It's more spicier, it's warmer, while still maintaining this blue tint to it. Like the Sauvage, it's a blue fragrance. Right. It's so strange, but the science of it all really is the defining factor in it all.
Yeah, and the analytical, pessimistic part of me, is they were making something and the formulation was off, and like, oh, took it in a spicy direction. Let's release this one. Or this one was, we just reduced this, and then that's what the result was. And let's make some money off this. And we made a batch, and you never know because accidents can be. Yeah. Like I said, I built a brand on accidents. That's why I have 40 different fragrances that are waiting for me. Yeah. It's beckoning for me to finish. Accidents are okay. I'm not a big proponent of flankers. The TOB extrait was really my experiment, but I tested it on a lot. I tried to make an extrait on the Bravida, on the Baccio, on the Danae.
I got to smell that.
It doesn't. And for me, I don't want to do anything that's redundant, that doesn't have its own place in the Argos pantheon. I do have the extrait with me. I would love for you to smell this.
I would love to. You kidding me?
Here's the extrait right now. I'll roll it over.
You're a gentleman and a scholar.
All right. So now you can try the EDP extrait de parfum.
Because
people say EDP, I'm like, EDP what?
I love the
parfum
original.
Or extrait de parfum?
I'm wearing the original, so... I love these magnetic atomizers.
Love the click. Yes,
oh my God. The color, look, I don't know if you can see this. It's beautiful multicolor.
That one's called Ethereal Bloom.
Oh, it's beautiful.
So we got the Mythic Blue right here, and then we've got the Gods and Legends Greek Zodiac. So you're going to get a little more spice.
This smells a little brighter to me.
Well, maybe you're getting the fruit nuances.
I'm smelling the fruit more.
The white peach and the apple. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm smelling the fruit more in the extrait. Oh, this is gorgeous. Mm-hmm. This is fucking nice.
And I don't even appreciate it as much as I should because I smell it so much.
Oh, it smells nice. I think I might prefer the original more. Mm-hmm.
Which is fine.
I don't know. You know what? I got to sit.
And I love that.
I got to sit with it.
You got to take your time with it.
Yeah, because I can't judge it right now. Mm-hmm. It smells great off first sniff. You got to remember, I have how many scotches deep?
I'm there. I'm right there with you.
Olfactory senses. Yeah. We were talking about that firing off. I've been drinking a little bit. Oh, this smells great. Yeah. It 100% smells different.
This is really the perfect lounge, drinking, pub, going out. Because it's got that rummy, boozy, fruity, tobacco-y.
Triumph of Bacchus is why I fell in love with your house.
When people ask me, what is your favorite? And I'm like, they're all my kids. And I'm like, they ask me, which one do I wear the most? And I'm like, well, I'm wearing stuff that you won't even know for another 2 years because I have to. But Triumph of Bacchus is the gateway drug. It's the one, I have to say I love that one because it really put the brand on the map, so to speak. And then from there, they were able to try Baccio and Bravido and Danae and Love Triumphs of War and now Chiron's Veil and Sacred Flame. And, I'm getting so much positive feedback now from Sacred Flame and Chiron's Veil.
Listen, how do I get on that tester guinea pig list?
You got to be family or you got to live in Texas.
How do I become family?
You got to move to Texas.
maybe one day. What's in the store for the future of Argos? And anything that you can premiere now or tease here publicly, or?
Well, we got the new travel atomizer. We just released the 3 skins. And what was cool about these, that Ethereal Bloom one that you have in your hand right there, that was one that I actually had the Argos Facebook group. It's called Argos Fragrance Connoisseurs, AFC group. And they voted on that. Yeah, Facebook. They voted on that skin. And this was a test for me, to see how well it would do. And it's doing so well, I'll probably release a new skin every quarter or every half a year.
I love this one personally the most.
Yeah, the Gods and Legends.
That's my favorite.
That was a little fun for me because I was able to throw Nemean Lion, Fall of Phaeton in there. And then some of the new fragrances that aren't even out yet are on there.
Wow.
So that's what's kind of cool about that one. So the travel atomizer's new. I've got some new leather goods I've been doing for a couple years for some private customers of mine.
Wow.
I'll be premiering those next fall. I've got about 50 bags right now with different skins, ostrich,
really,
crocodile, cowhide, all genuine, real leather, no polyurethane bullshit.
Yeah.
To me, when people say, you know what, you need to be renewable, it's like, you want to buy a new bag every year, or do you want an heirloom grade product that you're going to have for 30 years? Yeah. That you're going to be able to pass down. That's what I'm about. Something that's going to be around after I'm gone, something that's going to last. So that to me, I don't care about recyclable as long as it's quality and it's going to last. That is recyclable. That is renewable.
Yes.
Because you don't have to replace it.
Of course.
Yes.
That's what I love about you the most, is because most niche fragrance houses have just fragrances, but not you. You have a lot of high-end accessories to go along with said releases, but the best part that I take away from all of it is that it's stuff that you want from yourself. And I know deep within my heart, that's what it is.
And it all stems back to making what I want from me. That's the highest standard right there.
What's better than that, right?
There's nothing better than what I want.
Nothing.
If I'm not going to buy it, I'm not going to spend time and thought and effort and money on it. Why would I want to put it out there?
Exactly.
And that's the bottom line.
Totally. That's why I can relate to you the most, is because of that. So on that note, thank you so much for coming. This was a blessing. I couldn't wait to record with you finally here. I can't wait to share your story with everybody. Thank you so much for coming and
Thanks for
being
having
involved
me.
with the podcast.
I'm glad you took the time. It's a beautiful setup in here. If everybody could see this,
I'm glad you like it.
He's got like little toe buttons underneath there that he's controlling stuff.
That's it,
he's
my
like
foot, baby. You can see my sock.
He's like a one-man army over here. But I appreciate that you took the time too, and you did this right. I'm glad everything worked out, and I was here.
Yeah,
and we got
You're the
this
best.
done.
I owe you one, truthfully. Thank you.
I'll take you up on that.
All right, brother. You have a good night. Thank you.
Bye, everybody.